Chapter 46:11. Dong Tianqian frowned and asked, "You mean this passage is different from before?" "Yes." Princess Moon Fairy nodded. "What's wrong? If the illusion here isn't real, why would your father be so scared?" The inner demons suddenly sneered. "Ha!" Princess Moon Fairy looked at the inner demons. "Don't use your imagination, it's not as complicated as you said." The inner demons looked around. Suddenly, his eyes began to change. A life and death eye. That's right. He who comprehended the law of life and death had the same ability as Qin Feiyang to distinguish between reality and illusion. As long as the life and death eye was opened, no illusion could hide. Yes, this guy has the life and death eye. What illusion are we afraid of? Princess Moon Fairy slapped her head and glared at the inner demons. Why didn't you remind me earlier? Did you want to see me embarrass myself? Do you think I want to talk to you? The inner demons curled his lips in disdain. This attitude made Princess Moon Fairy gnash her teeth in anger. However, the inner demon did not pay any attention to her and looked around again. For a moment, the place fell into a dead silence. Everyone looked at the inner demons nervously and expectantly. What? Suddenly, the inner demon's eyes trembled. What's wrong? This exclamation caused everyone's hearts to jump to their throats. It's actually not an illusion, the inner demons said in disbelief. It's not? Qin Feiyang couldn't help but frown. The passage, would it really change? He couldn't help but want to open the life and death eye to see. But when he thought of Princess Moon Fairy, Dong Qingyuan, and Dong Hanzong, he dispelled this idea. It seems that I guessed it by accident before. But why is that? Grandfather and father entered the secret realm twice, and the passage was the same. Why did it change when it was our turn? Princess Moon Fairy looked at the surrounding mountains with a puzzled face. If the passage really changed, it would be a disaster for them. Because once that happened, the records in the handbook would lose their meaning. Everything was brand new. Everything that was brand new was unknown. Facing the unknown, every step would be difficult. I'll go take a look around, Qin Feiyang suddenly said. What are you looking at? How can you act alone in such a dangerous place? Princess Moon Fairy said angrily. I'm fine. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, turned around and flew away. You. Princess Wuxia was extremely angry. She looked at Dong Tianqian and the other two and angrily said, Who brought him here? Why is he so disobedient? Cough cough. Dong Tianqian coughed dryly. He looked at the Moon Fairy Princess and laughed dryly. I brought him here. You brought him here. Why didn't you discipline him properly? Princess Moon Fairy glared at him angrily. I'm fine. Let him take a look at the situation and scout ahead. Dong Tianqian waved his hand. In his heart, however, he was filled with bitterness. Discipline him? Don't joke around. Was Qin Feiyang someone he could discipline? Now that they were already in the passage, Qin Feiyang did not need to hide his identity anymore. Hence, it was best not to provoke him. Otherwise, they would be killed. I'll go take a look too. The white-eyed wolf grinned and chased after Qin Feiyang. When Princess Wuxia saw this, her face turned ashen with anger. Why were they so unruly? Sister Moon Immortal, calm down, calm down. Aren't these people just cannon fodder? Why are you being so calculative? Dong Xian walked to Princess Moon Fairy's side and secretly laughed. Cannon fodder? Princess Moon Fairy was stunned and looked at Dong Xian in disbelief. Didn't you notice? These people are not familiar faces. Actually, they're just consecrators of our family. It doesn't matter if they die. Dong Xian thought. When Princess Moon Fairy heard this, she glanced at the monarch and the others and transmitted her voice. Sister Xian, I didn't realize that you were such a ruthless person. Being born in our family, how can I survive if I'm not ruthless? Dong Xian smiled nonchalantly. Little Qinzi, wait for me. The white-eyed wolf caught up with Qin Feiyang and glanced at Princess Moon Fairy behind him. He said in a low voice, This woman is bossy. She really thinks she's someone important. Since we're already in the passage, why don't we just turn against her? There's no hurry. She has the origin energy and an autark sovereign divine weapon. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. We have more than 400,000 strands of origin energy now. Why should we be afraid of her? I don't believe that the monarch will give her all of his origin energy. The white-eyed wolf sneered. I'm not afraid. If we make a move, she won't just sit there and wait for death. She'll definitely use her origin energy to resist. At that time, won't we destroy the origin energy in her hands? So, instead of fighting with her now and risking our lives, we might as well keep her alive and let her use her origin energy to do something for us. Qin Feiyang smiled. So that's how it is. The white-eyed wolf nodded and asked suspiciously, Then what are you going to do now? Qin Feiyang said, I'm going to find a place and activate my Eye of Life and Death to see if this is an illusion. Didn't the inner demons already see it? The white-eyed wolf was stunned. Who knows if he's just trying to scare Princess Moon Fairy? Qin Feiyang pursed his lips. The white-eyed wolf was stunned. He chuckled and said, According to what you said, the inner demons can't be interested in Princess Moon Fairy, right? That's what I'm worried about. Qin Feiyang rubbed his forehead and scanned the mountains and rivers in front of him. Suddenly, he locked his eyes on a valley not far away. Immediately, the two of them rushed into the valley. The white-eyed wolf immediately took out a jar of divine wine and said with a sneaky smile, I've been bored to death these past few months. After saying that, he raised his head and gulped down the wine like a whale. He hadn't touched a single drop of wine in the past few months, since he came from the Star River to the Starry Sky domain. The wine worm in his stomach had long been crying out. Qin Feiyang glanced at the wine jar and shook his head with a smile. Then his eyes also surged with the power of life and death. Soon the Eye of Life and Death appeared. After the Eye of Life and Death opened, he immediately raised his head and scanned the surroundings. Immediately, he was dumbfounded. The surrounding mountains and rivers, even the grass and trees didn't change at all. This also meant that the inner demons didn't trick them. The place they were in now was really not an illusion. Why was it like this? How could the passage change by itself? If it really changed, logically speaking, when the emperor and his wife came in, it must be different from when the dominator and his wife of the divine kingdom came in. It didn't make sense that when the emperor and his wife came in, it was still the same as before. But now that they came in, it was different from before. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang looked at the white-eyed wolf and asked, Say, is there anyone else in this secret realm? Someone else? The white-eyed wolf was stunned. What did he mean? What I mean is, isn't the secret realm a treasure? Then, is there a possibility that there is a master behind this treasure? Qin Feiyang pondered. The white-eyed wolf lowered his head and pondered for a while. Then he suddenly looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, You mean the secret realm has an owner and someone is controlling it? That's what I mean. Qin Feiyang nodded. The white-eyed wolf was stunned. He looked up at the mountains and rivers around, and finally looked up at the sky. He said in a panic, Little Qinzi, you're scaring me. This is not a joke. If what Qin Feiyang said was true, there might be someone standing somewhere and staring at them now. When did you become so timid? Qin Feiyang shook his head. This kind of baseless guess could actually scare this guy. It was a little surprising. Damn, why don't you take a look at where you are? The white-eyed wolf's face darkened. Qin Feiyang couldn't help laughing. He looked up and said with a smile, Since we're already out, let's go and have a look around. After that, he rose into the air and left. The white-eyed wolf also got up, holding the wine jar. However, just as the white-eyed wolf got up, boom! A murderous intent suddenly flashed in the white-eyed wolf's eyes. The power of laws erupted, and he threw a punch at Qin Feiyang's head. Who could have predicted this sudden turn of events? If it were anyone else, they would definitely be killed by the white-eyed wolf. However, Qin Feiyang was an exception. Because he was particularly sensitive to murderous intent. The moment the white-eyed wolf revealed his murderous intent, he immediately noticed it. So when the white-eyed wolf threw a punch at him, he decisively activated the dual will of the Great Path, and the momentary time to quickly dodge. After dodging, he turned around and glared at the white-eyed wolf, shouting, Are you crazy? I've long disliked you. The white-eyed wolf drank the divine wine, and his eyes were filled with strong murderous intent. He sneered and said, Look at you. What ability do you have? The 6-word divine formula was given to me by someone else. The ancient castle and Song Shui were also born together. Even your law of life and death was only comprehended through the 6-word divine formula. If it weren't for us helping you along the way, you would have died countless times. But what about you? You even obtained the Black Tortoise world, and became the ruler of a world. You even have so many followers. This is such an unfair thing. So, I'm going to kill you and take everything from you. The white-eyed wolf sneered and activated the heaven-devouring beast-fighting soul. A giant golden figure towered into the sky, exuding a terrifying aura. Qin Feiyang's face was filled with disbelief. The white-eyed wolf actually said such a thing? And even wanted to kill him? Take everything from him? How was that possible? The white-eyed wolf he knew was definitely not such a person. This was because he and the white-eyed wolf had been together since they were young. They had gone through countless life and death situations together. Therefore, anyone could kill him behind his back, except for the white-eyed wolf. On this point, he firmly believed it without a doubt. But what was going on with the white-eyed wolf now? Chi deviation. Wait a minute. Could it be that he had been wrong all along? Was this actually an illusion? Thinking of this, he took a step back. As he retreated, he activated the Eye of Life and Death again and stared at the white-eyed wolf. However, the white-eyed wolf in front of him did not change at all. He was the real white-eyed wolf. If the white-eyed wolf in front of him was really an illusion, then under the prying of the Eye of Life and Death, it would definitely dissipate. Qin Feiyang quickly looked at the surrounding mountains and rivers, the void, the sky, and even the clouds in the sky. He did not let go of the slightest bit of change. What the hell was going on? Chapter 46:12. In the blink of an eye. At this moment, another time array suddenly opened under the white-eyed wolf's feet. Deprive. With a low roar, the battle soul behind the white-eyed wolf suddenly opened its bloody mouth. Qin Feiyang immediately felt that the power of law in his body seemed to be grabbed by an invisible hand and pulled out of his body. Third innate ability. Qin Feiyang's expression changed. The white-eyed wolf's third innate ability was the deprive law. Although the speed of the deprive law was usually very slow, if coupled with the time array, it would be like the eye of heaven copying the ultimate profound. The speed would be greatly increased. He never thought that the white-eyed wolf would actually use the third innate ability to deal with him. I am the invincible king. Only I am worthy of being the ruler of the Black Tortoise realm. The white-eyed wolf laughed sinisterly. Qin Feiyang's eyes darkened as he shouted, "Wake up for me. Wake up." The white-eyed wolf was startled. What did that mean? Suddenly, his face revealed a look of realization, and his eyes immediately became playful as he said, "You don't think that I am being controlled by something and have lost my mind, do you?" Qin Feiyang frowned. So calm, so rational, no matter how he looked at it, it didn't seem like he was being controlled. But what was going on? In short, he absolutely did not believe that the white-eyed wolf would betray him. There was no time to think about it, because the great laws in his body were about to be stripped out. Boom. He didn't dare to hide anything anymore. Dual will of heaven, instant time, instantly activated. He didn't fight the white-eyed wolf head-on, turned around and left without looking back. Because now, he didn't dare to fight head-on. The white-eyed wolf's battle soul posed a great threat to his laws. That was to say, if he didn't think of a way to get rid of the white-eyed wolf's battle soul, he wouldn't be able to fight it. Escape? Haha. He actually ran away without a fight. Is this still the Qin Feiyang I know? The white-eyed wolf laughed loudly. He spread his golden wings and chased after them. However, in terms of speed, he was much slower than Qin Feiyang. This was because the golden wings could only increase one's speed for an instant. Qin Feiyang, on the other hand, had an additional will of the heavenly Tao. An instant of time, and the will of the heavenly Tao naturally could not be compared. In just a short while, Qin Feiyang had left the white-eyed wolf far behind. After completely shaking off the white-eyed wolf, Qin Feiyang entered a forest and activated the concealment technique. All of his aura instantly disappeared. A short moment passed. Accompanied by a powerful aura, the white-eyed wolf finally caught up, followed by a powerful divine sense. Wherever he went, His divine sense covered the sky and covered the earth. Qin Feiyang's expression froze. As expected of the white-eyed wolf, he knew everything about him. Because, if it were anyone else, they would never have thought that Qin Feiyang would activate the concealment technique and hide in the forest below. In just a moment, the white-eyed wolf discovered Qin Feiyang, and a trace of ridicule crept up the corner of his mouth. He activated all of his ultimate profound meanings, and the will of the heavenly Tao erupted as he crazily charged towards the forest below. It seems that I can only fight. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath. He really did not want to fight with the white-eyed wolf. But there was no other way. The white-eyed wolf knew him too well, and could not easily avoid him. Boom! The ultimate profound meaning of the law of life and death instantly appeared. The dual will of the heavenly Tao erupted with the power to destroy the world and blasted towards the white-eyed wolf's ultimate profound meaning. With a loud bang, the white-eyed wolf's ultimate profound meaning was annihilated on the spot. Qin Feiyang took a step forward, and a terrifying aura surged out. The surrounding mountains and rivers continued to collapse as he landed in front of the white-eyed wolf. Finally, you stopped running away. The white-eyed wolf laughed. Running away? I've never thought of running away. I just don't want to fight with you. Qin Feiyang shook his head. You don't want to fight with me? Then you're really loyal and righteous. What a pity. I won't fall for this. Today you must die. The white-eyed wolf laughed sinisterly. His expression was extremely crazy, and even his eyes were suffused with a trace of blood-red light. He looked like a demon god that had returned. Roar! The heaven-devouring beast battle soul appeared again. Immediately, a time array appeared under its feet. Qin Feiyang looked at the heaven-devouring beast battle soul. Its terrifying aura was awe-inspiring. Thinking back to all these years, he seemed to have never really fought with the white-eyed wolf. Even if there was, it was just a small fight. Perhaps this would be a good opportunity for him. He wanted to see who was stronger between him and the white-eyed wolf. Heaven-devouring beast battle soul. He wanted to see if the Eye of Heaven could replicate it. Roar! Accompanied by an earth-shattering dragon roar, the purple gold dragon soul roared out. Dragon power surged and shook all directions. Immediately after, the Eye of Heaven appeared. A mighty aura suddenly swept across the world like a tide and pounced on the white-eyed wolf's battle soul. Replicate! Qin Feiyang roared. Replicate! You must be dreaming. The white-eyed wolf sneered. However, before he finished his words, the void in front of the purple gold dragon soul immediately surged with dazzling golden light. A supreme aura of all beasts also emerged. This aura was the heaven-devouring beast battle soul's aura. How can this be? The white-eyed wolf's expression stiffened. Looking at the situation, it seemed that it could replicate his battle soul? Absolutely impossible. His battle soul was an invincible existence. It was even more powerful than the 10 strongest fighting souls. In his eyes, the 10 strongest fighting souls were not comparable to his battle soul. But now, the Eye of Heaven was able to replicate his fighting soul. What did this mean? It meant that the 10 strongest fighting souls were one level higher than his battle soul. Activate the first innate superpower. Take away his fighting soul. The white-eyed wolf roared. The giant golden beast roared. A powerful force surged toward the Eye of Heaven. It actually wanted to seize the Eye of Heaven? One had to know. This was the 10 strongest fighting souls. Perhaps only the white-eyed wolf dared to have such a crazy idea. Boom! The power of the two fighting souls collided with each other in an instant, resulting in an earth-shattering explosion. This scene caused Qin Feiyang to involuntarily frown. The white-eyed wolf's expression had a trace of joy. Because the power of the heaven-devouring beast battle soul could compete with the Eye of Heaven. How powerful was the Eye of Heaven? However, at this moment, the heaven-devouring beast battle soul could compete with the Eye of Heaven. What did this mean? It meant, in a sense, the heaven-devouring beast battle soul was not much weaker than the Eye of Heaven. Quickly replicate it. Qin Feiyang stared at the Eye of Heaven and couldn't help but clench his fists. As long as it could be replicated, the white-eyed wolf's battle soul would not be a concern. However, although there was a dazzling golden light and the aura of the heaven-devouring beast battle soul, the battle soul form could not be condensed. According to the ratio, the Eye of Heaven could only replicate 1/10 of the battle soul, and the remaining 9/10 could not be replicated. Could it be related to speed? Qin Feiyang frowned and a time array appeared under his feet. 5,000 years in a day. With the appearance of the time array, the time in this place began to flow rapidly. However, despite the support of the time law, it was still unable to replicate the heaven-devouring beast battle soul. It was still a dazzling golden light that surged in the void in front of the purple gold dragon soul. Haha! The white-eyed wolf looked at this scene and laughed crazily. He thought it could be replicated, but it turned out to be a false alarm. At this moment, Qin Feiyang's heart was very complicated, both happy and worried. What made him happy was that the white-eyed wolf's battle soul had evolved into the world's strongest battle soul. In the future, the world would not only have the current 10 strongest battle souls, but the 11 strongest battle souls. What made him worried was that if the white-eyed wolf still did not wake up and insisted on fighting to the death with him, it would inevitably be a situation where both sides suffered. Sorry, I have something to do today. Chapter 46:13. The two fighting souls were in a stalemate. Fortunately, the heaven-swallowing fighting soul's special ability was blocked by the Eye of Heaven. This included the deprivation of laws. At least for now, Qin Feiyang did not have to worry about the white-eyed wolf depriving him of laws during the battle. No one was strong and no one was weak. The two fighting souls restrained each other. In other words, when Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf fought, the power of the fighting souls could not be exerted and could only rely on other means. As for other means, Qin Feiyang naturally had full confidence in them. Dual will of heaven, the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, and 3,000 incarnations. These were all existences that could crush the white-eyed wolf. Because the white-eyed wolf, the golden wings and the fighting souls were basically all his means. Boom! Qin Feiyang took a step forward, activating the law of life and death, and the 7 ultimate meanings in an instant. In order to figure out the white-eyed wolf's situation, he must first suppress him. Therefore he did not hold back. I really did not expect such a situation to occur in the end. Two fighting souls, no one can do anything to each other. However, if you think that you can defeat me by relying on the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, then you are simply daydreaming. The white-eyed wolf laughed sinisterly. As his voice fell, a flame mark appeared between his eyebrows. This mark, Qin Feiyang frowned. Of course he knew about this mark. When the white-eyed wolf activated this mark, he had summoned a blood-red giant wolf with 10 pairs of wings on its back. Its combat power was quite strong. It was comparable to a super forbidden technique. However, although the power of this mark was very strong, it did not seem to be strong enough to be on par with the law of life and death. However, now, where did the white-eyed wolf find such confidence? I always thought that all of you wanted to know whether I was hiding my strength or not. Now I will tell you. Yes. The white-eyed wolf laughed. Roar. Accompanied by a deafening howl, a huge blood-red wolf rushed out from between the white-eyed wolf's eyebrows. Its body was as large as a mountain, especially its 10 pairs of blood-red wings. As long as they were spread open, they could cover the sky. Now I'll show you its true power. The white-eyed wolf laughed loudly. As he waved his hand, the giant crimson wolf raised its head and howled, and dazzling golden light surged from its body. The next moment, what happened next shocked Qin Feiyang. With the emergence of the golden light, the blood-red hair on the giant wolf's body quickly turned into a golden color. It was the same for the 10 pairs of wings. Every single wing seemed to be made of pure gold and was dazzling. And at the same time, Qin Feiyang was also surprised to find that the flame pattern between the white-eyed wolf's eyebrows had turned into a golden flame pattern, like a cluster of burning flames. What happened? Qin Feiyang frowned. However, the next moment, a scene that shocked him even more appeared. As the giant crimson wolf turned into a giant golden wolf, a ferocious aura surged from its body. This ferocious beast was like the birth of a supreme beast. Its aura was exactly the same as the heaven-swallowing beast. Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded on the spot. Why did the giant golden wolf exude the same aura as the heaven-swallowing beast? One had to know. The The giant wolf and the heaven-swallowing beast were not related at all. The heaven-swallowing beast was a frog. The giant wolf was a wolf. How could the aura of the two be the same? He could not figure out the relationship between the white-eyed wolf and the heaven-swallowing beast. Why was the true appearance of the fighting soul a heaven-swallowing beast? Why did the giant wolf summoned from between the eyebrows have the same aura as the heaven-swallowing beast? It was back. With the emergence of the heaven-swallowing beast's power, the void and earth here were instantly razed to the ground. Qin Feiyang clenched his fists. His eyes were filled with disbelief. The aura that the giant golden wolf exuded was not inferior to the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death. It's hard to believe, right? Your eye of heaven, frenzied man's evil sword, Long Chen's God's domain, Mu Tianyang's evil eye, etc. All along, you guys have been scrambling to perform as if you were afraid that I would steal your limelight. Little did you know that I am not interested at all. Actually, this is good because I can catch you guys off guard. Just like now. The white-eyed wolf's expression at this moment was extremely ferocious. Accompanied by a wolf howl, the giant golden wolf bared its fangs. Its body was comparable to a giant mountain, exuding a shocking aura as it pounced on Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly. With a wave of his hand, 8 ultimate meanings attacked. Roar! The giant golden wolf roared and actually raised its 2 claws to grab the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death. What is it trying to do? Grab the law of life and death with its bare hands. As expected. Just as Qin Feiyang had expected, the giant golden wolf stretched out its 2 claws and grabbed the kingdom of life and death. Then the 2 claws slammed down, and with a loud bang, the kingdom of life and death collapsed on the spot. How powerful is this? Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. What was the difference between smashing the law of life and death with its claws and using its bare hands? The most important thing was, after smashing the law of life and death, the giant golden wolf's 2 claws were not damaged at all. This meant that the giant golden wolf's combat power was above the law of life and death. Is this the strength of the white-eyed wolf? This guy had really hidden his strength well. Bang! While Qin Feiyang was still in shock, the enormous golden wolf attacked again, and easily shattered the other 7 ultimate profundities. The whole process was as easy as blowing off dust. So powerful. Qin Feiyang was shocked. It could be said that with the white-eyed wolf's combat power, aside from some special means, it was already invincible in the world. Even for people like Mu Tianyang, Lin Yi, Mu Qing, and Dong Zhengyang who had mastered the strongest fighting soul, the white-eyed wolf could crush them. This was because the strongest fighting soul had no effect on the white-eyed wolf at all. On the contrary, the giant golden wolf summoned by the white-eyed wolf was estimated to be unstoppable. Surprised? Surprised? Haha. You are not the only one with the strongest trump card, Qin Feiyang. The white-eyed wolf laughed wildly. The giant golden wolf bared its fangs and brandished its claws. With monstrous ferocity, it pounced on Qin Feiyang. Looking at its ferocious appearance, it seemed to want to tear Qin Feiyang into pieces. Aren't you being arrogant too early? Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. Swish! In an instant, 3,000 avatars appeared in the void behind him. Looking at the appearance of the 3,000 avatars, the white-eyed wolf could not help but frown. I want to see where the limit of this thing that you summoned is. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. Bang! The 3,000 avatars behind him immediately activated their ultimate meanings. However, they did not activate the ultimate meaning of life and death laws, nor did they activate the dual will of heavenly Tao. However, even so, there were a total of 21,000 ultimate meanings of ultimate laws. 21,000 ultimate meanings, coupled with the will of heavenly Tao, was enough to be shocking. Kill. The 3,000 avatars roared, and their killing intent shook the sky. Following closely, 21,000 ultimate meanings turned into a terrifying torrent, drowning the vast sky and charging toward the giant golden wolf. Chapter 46:14. In an instant, the two clashed. The giant golden wolf was like a god of war that had descended to the mortal world. It was so powerful that it made people revere it. The ultimates were constantly being shattered by it. The destructive aura that erupted from it spread out in all directions. Qin Feiyang was looking forward to it. How powerful was this giant golden wolf? Could it be comparable to senior brother Feng Zi's all-evil sword? Of course. This was just the ordinary all-evil sword. If it was enhanced by the power of evil, the lethality of the all-evil sword would reach an extremely terrifying level. Just like the previous time in the Thousand Demons Valley. Using the evil power of the entire Thousand Demons Valley to enhance the lethality of the all-evil sword and crush all of Princess Yuxian's power of laws. But as expected, no matter how powerful the giant golden wolf was, it wouldn't be able to reach such a level. Boom. The two clashed violently. The destructive aura was earth-shattering. A moment later, roar. Finally, with a wail, the giant golden wolf collapsed and dissipated into the void. Suck. Although the 3,000 incarnations ultimates had destroyed the giant golden wolf, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but take a deep breath. Because the giant golden wolf had destroyed a total of 10,000 ultimates. What kind of concept was 10,000 ultimates? One had to know. A powerhouse with heavenly Dao could, at most, master 9 ultimate profundities of ultimate laws. Such lethality was heaven-defying. He remembered that when Feng Zi challenged Ji Laosher in the village, the all-evil sword had been enhanced by the power of evil. That was why it had such power to destroy 10,000 ultimates. Although the lethality of the all-evil sword had increased, its power was still inferior to the white-eyed wolf's giant golden wolf. It was truly unexpected. The white-eyed wolf still had such a terrifying technique hidden up his sleeve. Rumble. After destroying the giant golden wolf, the remaining 11,000 ultimates didn't stop, and went straight for the white-eyed wolf. If my battle soul could deprive you of your laws, battle soul, and cultivation, would you still be so arrogant? The white-eyed wolf roared. Then why didn't you say that if my eye of heaven could replicate your battle soul, you would have no chance of winning? No matter what, I'm still stronger. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. 11,000 ultimate profound meanings instantly drowned the white-eyed wolf like a tide. Roar. Roar. The white-eyed wolf reverted to its true form and howled madly. The power of all kinds of laws surged in all directions. However, no matter how he struggled, it was useless. His body was directly shattered in the void, and blood splattered everywhere. Just as the white-eyed wolf's body shattered, Qin Feiyang looked at his 3,000 avatars. The 3,000 avatars understood and quickly dispersed their ultimate profundity. Don't want to kill me? Or do you not have the heart to kill me? The white-eyed wolf's divine soul stood awkwardly in the shattered void. You know that I can't kill you. Qin Feiyang shook his head. You're still so kind. If you hadn't been a little more ruthless, you wouldn't have ended up like this. Instead of being grateful, the white-eyed wolf mocked him. Am I in a bad situation now? Mu Tianyang, Dong Xingyang, the demon ancestor Mu Qing, and the monarch. Which one of them wasn't an enemy in the past? But now, everyone is fighting side by side against the central dynasty. Why is that? Isn't it because of my kindness and kindness? So I don't think there's anything wrong with being kind. Qin Feiyang said. How do you know if they're sincere about cooperating with you? After experiencing so much scheming, don't you understand that there's no telling what's in a person's heart? The white-eyed wolf sneered coldly. Qin Feiyang was silent for a while before he said with a faint smile, I believe in them, just like how they believe in me. Boom. As his voice fell, he took a step forward and appeared in front of the white-eyed wolf. The power of life and death surged out and sealed its divine soul. Whoosh! At this moment, the sound of air being torn apart could be heard. Qin Feiyang raised his head and saw a group of people majestically walking over. It was the madman, Princess Yuxian, and the others. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. The 3,000 incarnations dissipated and wiped out the battle fluctuations. Then he sealed the white-eyed wolf's divine soul in his sea of qi. What's going on? A few seconds later, a group of people landed in front of Qin Feiyang. Looking at the devastated land, the group of people were extremely bewildered. It's nothing. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Do you think we're stupid? The void and the land have become like this. How can it be nothing? The madman raised his eyebrows. And where's the white-eyed wolf? Isn't he with you? Huowu asked through voice transmission. Looking at the traces of battle here, could it be that the white-eyed wolf had an accident? He's really fine. Qin Feiyang shook his head, then looked at Huowu and said, The white-eyed wolf and I separated. Are you sure? The madman was still doubtful. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Princess Yuxian asked, Who were you fighting with before? A ferocious beast that doesn't know its place. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. What? There's a beast here. Could it be that we directly entered the secret realm? We didn't pass through the so-called passage? The group of people was shocked as they scanned the land below. Where's the beast's corpse? Why didn't I think of that? Dong Hanzong frowned. Both its soul and body are destroyed. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Is it strong? Mermaid Princess walked to Qin Feiyang's side and asked. Quite strong. Qin Feiyang nodded. It seems that this place isn't as peaceful as it looks on the surface. Fortunately, you're fine. Mermaid Princess glanced around, then looked at Qin Feiyang with a smile. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. But at this moment, his body and mind tightened, and his hair stood on end, because he felt a murderous aura again. And this murderous aura came from the Mermaid Princess next to him. He suddenly turned around and caught the hand that attacked him from behind. The owner of this hand was the Mermaid Princess. At this moment, looking at the Mermaid Princess's eyes again, there was no longer any gentleness in the past. It was filled with ruthless indifference. What the hell is going on? Qin Feiyang was going crazy in his heart. First it was the white-eyed wolf, and now it was his beloved woman, who was controlling all of this in the dark. What are you doing? Madman and the others also looked at the Mermaid Princess in surprise. The Mermaid Princess's eyes were cold. Boom. All of a sudden, a destructive aura rushed out from her body. Self-explosion. Qin Feiyang's body and mind were shocked. He quickly slapped the Mermaid Princess's lower abdomen. As long as he destroyed her sea of qi, he could stop the Mermaid Princess from self-explosion. But at this moment, another figure appeared in front of Qin Feiyang and grabbed Qin Feiyang's arm. This person was the madman. Just as he was about to destroy the Mermaid Princess's angry words, because of the madman's obstruction, the Mermaid Princess's body exploded on the spot. A monstrous aura suddenly swept out in all directions like a torrent. Not only Qin Feiyang, but the madman and the others were also sent flying on the spot, blood gushing out of their mouths. Senior brother, what are you doing? Qin Feiyang roared, staring at the place where the Mermaid Princess exploded. His eyes were blood red, and his teeth cracked. He was almost going crazy. Chapter 46:15. Old Meng could understand. After all, during this period of time, the updates were indeed unstable, but there was nothing he could do about it. Originally, Old Meng had always wanted to write full-time. He wandered in the sea of books and wrote stories wholeheartedly. However, reality was cruel. The royalties now were not as good as before. He could no longer support a family. To make it clear, Old Meng had 3 children. The eldest one was in the 6th grade. The second one had just signed up for the 1st grade. The third one was a girl. She was very cute. She was Old Meng's heartwarming little cotton-padded jacket. She had just started kindergarten today. Those who had children knew that it was too tiring to raise a child now. Their energy and finances were like a mountain. Fortunately, Old Meng was still young. After today, he would be 33 years old tomorrow. He could bear it. Therefore, during this period of time, Old Meng had been looking for a job. Yes. A few days ago, he found a job. The salary was not bad. Tomorrow morning, Old Meng would go to work. In fact, he would be moving bricks. Therefore, in the future, he would guarantee that he would write at least 2 chapters a day. During the weekend, if he had time, he would try his best to add more. But everyone, don't worry. The immortal god of war would not have a bad ending. He would not have a bad ending. He would not have a bad ending. Important things had to be said 3 times. Old Meng would keep writing this story until there was a perfect ending. In the end, the world was realistic. Life was not easy. Everyone had a hard life. Why make life difficult for people with a hard life? Chapter 46:16. What are we doing? Madman laughed and said, Of course it's to make you suffer. How about it? How does it feel to see your beloved woman self-destruct in front of you? Hearing this, Qin Feiyang's mind suddenly rumbled. Even senior brother Madman betrayed him? Looking at this scene, the others were also shocked. Especially Fire Dance Li Feng and the king. What was going on? First, the mermaid princess tried to attack Qin Feiyang, but when she failed, she self-destructed. The most important thing was, Madman actually stopped Qin Feiyang from stopping the mermaid princess from self-destructing. And now, he even said such words. Could it be that both Madman and the mermaid princess had gone mad? Answer me, how do you feel? Madman looked at Qin Feiyang mockingly. Looking at the indifferent Madman, Qin Feiyang clenched his fists tightly. Why did it become like this? First, it was the white-eyed wolf, then the woman he loved the most, and now it was senior brother Madman, who was secretly controlling all of this. The anger in his heart burned crazily, almost making him lose his mind. Boom. Inside his body, a monstrous murderous aura emerged. Whether it was his eyes or his long hair, they were instantly blood red. This aura is so familiar. Princess Moon Fairy's pupils shrank. Qin Feiyang, who had almost lost his mind, no longer concealed his aura. Calm down. Fire Dance and Li Feng took a step forward and attacked Qin Feiyang from both sides. Boom. However, Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear, and his body was full of hostility, accompanied by a terrifying aura. The law of life and death and the 7 strongest laws appeared, followed by the eruption of the dual will of heaven. Law of life and death. Princess Moon Fairy, Dong Hanzong, and Dong Qingyuan's expressions changed drastically. At the same time, Dong Tianqian, Dong Xian, and Dong Qin couldn't help but feel nervous as they glanced at the Princess Moon Fairy and the other two. Because now, Qin Feiyang's activation of the law of life and death was equivalent to exposing his identity. Everyone knew. In the entire Divine Kingdom and Sky Cloud realm, only the inner demons and Qin Feiyang had mastered the law of life and death's ultimate laws. The inner demons was beside Princess Moon Fairy. Naturally, it couldn't be him. Therefore, there was only one explanation. This person was the mortal enemy of the Central Dynasty, Qin Feiyang. Why was Qin Feiyang in this team? Dong Tianqian, what's going on? Dong Hanzong glared at Dong Tianqian. Apart from anger, there was also a trace. This was the fear of heaven's fear. Qin Of it. Otherwise, Dong Hanzong would definitely use this as an excuse to make a fuss. He is your family's consecrator. How could you not know who you are neglecting? If my guess is correct, you have already betrayed our Central Dynasty and become Qin Feiyang's lackey. Dong Hanzong laughed sinisterly. Don't talk nonsense. Dong Tianqian glared at Hanzong and glanced at Princess Moon Fairy. He was extremely nervous. You know very well whether I'm talking nonsense or not. Dong Hanzong coldly smiled. He turned his head to look at Princess Yuxian and said, Dong Tianqian and the other two were bound by a blood oath to begin with. They would not dare to disobey Qin Feiyang's orders. Thus, I think that it was Dong Tianqian who took the initiative to bring Qin Feiyang in. Princess Moon Fairy was silent, but her face was extremely ugly. Dong Hanzong, what are you up to? Although we are bound by the blood oath, we have never done anything wrong to the Central Dynasty. Although this person is our clan's consecrator, we didn't restrict his freedom. He can leave Sky Fortune City at any time. Maybe he was accidentally caught by Qin Feiyang, or maybe he was bribed by Qin Feiyang. In short, there are many possibilities. Why are you so sure that I brought him in? Dong Tianqian's eyes were gloomy. This Dong Hanzong was indeed a threat. He must be eliminated as soon as possible. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble in the future. Who knows if you have done anything wrong to the Central Dynasty? Dong Hanzong sneered. You, Dong Tianqian was furious. Enough! Princess Yuxian suddenly shouted. The two of them shrunk their necks and immediately quieted down. We'll talk about this later. Princess Moon Fairy looked at the two of them coldly, and turned to look at Madman. That's right. She looked at Madman. Why would Madman stop Qin Feiyang? Also, who was the woman who self-destructed earlier? This woman was wearing the Death God Army's uniform. Could it be that the Death God Army had also been infiltrated by Qin Feiyang's people? If that was the case, Princess Moon Fairy's scalp went numb when she thought of this. She swept a glance at the king and the others. Among these people, how many of them were Qin Feiyang's people? Sigh. Fire Dance and Li Feng looked at each other. They knew that Qin Feiyang's identity had been exposed. It was a foregone conclusion. Get out of the way. Qin Feiyang stared at the two of them. Looking at Qin Feiyang's blood-red eyes, the two of them instinctively took a few steps back. There was a trace of fear between their brows. At this moment, Qin Feiyang was extremely strange in their eyes. He was like a crazy beast. However, it wasn't his fault. The mermaid princess self-destructed in front of his eyes. As everyone knew, the mermaid princess was Qin Feiyang's most beloved woman. For the mermaid princess, Qin Feiyang could do anything, and was willing to do anything. But now, because of Madman's obstruction, he could only watch her self-destruct in front of his eyes. One could imagine how big of a blow it was to him. Are you angry? Madman laughed sinisterly. Qin Feiyang stared at Madman, his eyes surging with blood-red light, and gloomily said, I'll ask you one last time. Why did you do this? Why did you stop me from saving her? Why? Madman murmured and sneered. Because I hate you. Hate me? Qin Feiyang frowned. Yes. You know that I am the reincarnation of the Blood Demon King, and that my Blood Demon clan has an irreconcilable hatred with the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan, but you are still on good terms with the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan. I want to ask, have you ever thought about my feelings? If it wasn't for Ji Yunhai, would I have died in hell? If it wasn't for Ji Yunhai, would my Blood Demon clan almost be exterminated? Madman shouted angrily. His expression became more and more sinister. What? The reincarnation of the Blood Demon King. Princess Yuxian's eyes trembled. Wasn't the reincarnation of the Blood Demon King Madman? Dong Xian. Suddenly, she turned her head to look at Dong Xian, her eyes filled with anger, because Madman was now disguised as a consecrator of Dong Xian's clan. Dong Xian was shocked. In her heart she also panicked. The corner of Dong Hanzong's mouth lifted. He turned his head to look at Dong Xian and sneered. I didn't expect you to be in cahoots with Qin Feiyang. The heavens are really helping me. As long as I kill Dong Tianqian and Dong Xian, no one in the younger generation of the Central Dynasty can threaten me. Shut up. Dong Xian glared at him, then looked at Princess Yuxian and said, Sister Yuxian, I really didn't know about this. I'm also very puzzled now. Princess Yuxian gave her a deep look, then continued to look at Qin Feiyang and Madman. At the same time, Qin Feiyang heard Madman's words, and his face became gloomier. When I reconciled with the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan, I didn't hide anything from you. And you were also involved in the entire process. Why didn't you say this at that time? Is there any use for me to say it? The monarch is Qin Baishan's grandfather. Your Qin clan and the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan have blood thicker than water. Madman laughed sinisterly. Qin Feiyang said angrily, If you say it, I will definitely respect your opinion. After all, we are brothers, what can't we say? Respect my opinion? Will you? Do you think I can't see that you have always had a trace of desire for the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan? And you have always been merciful. Madman sneered. What a joke. Back in the Sky Cloud Realm's western continent, if it wasn't for the Divine Kingdom's sovereign, the monarch would have died at my hands. Touch your conscience and ask yourself, is this considered mercy? Qin Feiyang said angrily. Although Ji Tianyue had begged him at first, hoping that he would be merciful to the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan, he didn't do so. The only reason he reconciled later was because he saw the helplessness in the monarch's heart. Since there was a chance to reconcile, why should he risk his life? Moreover, the monarch, the divine king, and the sovereign of the human race had been of great help to them. It was the simplest point. If it wasn't for the monarch and the other two giving them a large number of crystal veins and spirit veins, how could the Black Tortoise realm grow so fast? If it wasn't for the monarch, the divine king, and the sovereign of the human race cooperating with them and tipping them off, they might have been in the hands of these people from the Central Dynasty. In short, after the reconciliation, the ones who benefited the most were them. Although the three major races also benefited, they also had to bear the risk of being exposed. Taking a step back, if the monarch, the divine king, and the sovereign didn't agree to reconcile back then, the three major races would definitely have followed in the footsteps of the beast race and the sea beasts. So, the real reason for the reconciliation was not because Qin Feiyang had any thoughts about the purple gold divine dragon clan, but because the three major races were sensible. Lunatic should know all of this, because Madman was one of the people who understood him the most. But now, he actually said these words. How could this not make him angry? He even stopped him from saving the woman he loved. At this moment, in his heart, there was only anger. It can't be. The human race, the god race, and the purple gold divine dragon clan have reconciled with Qin Feiyang? In that case, aren't they the spies that Qin Feiyang planted around us? Princess Moon Fairy murmured. There were Qin Feiyang's men in the Death God army. There were also Qin Feiyang's men beside Dong Tianqian, and the other two. Now even the monarch and the others were Qin Feiyang's men. The Central Dynasty, no. Could it be that the entire divine kingdom had been corrupted by Qin Feiyang? It was too terrifying. It turned out that there were so many spies lurking in the Central Dynasty. It was hard to imagine. Once a full-scale war broke out, how much damage would the Central Dynasty face? Stop talking nonsense. Anyway, it's either you die or I die today, Madman shouted. Accompanied by a loud clang, the all-evil sword appeared in the sky. The monstrous sharpness was like a torrent, destroying everything in all directions. Good. I'll fulfill your wish. Qin Feiyang's eyes also emitted a shocking murderous aura. The death of the mermaid princess continued to destroy his spirit and soul, almost making him collapse. Chapter 46:17. 3,000 clones instantly appeared behind him, and it was fully activated. A total of 3,000 clones stood neatly in the void behind Qin Feiyang. 3,000 clones. Fire Dance and the others trembled. Even 3,000 clones were activated, indicating that Qin Feiyang was serious. At the same time, Princess Moon Fairy, Dong Qingyuan, and Dong Hanzong's eyes trembled. The appearance of 3,000 clones naturally confirmed Qin Feiyang's identity. Pay attention, be ready to attack at any time. Princess Moon Fairy transmitted her voice to Dong Hanzong, Dong Qingyuan, and Dong Tianqian. Okay. Dong Hanzong and Dong Qingyuan nodded. However, Dong Tianqian and the other two hesitated. What are you guys hesitating for? Could it be that you guys are really colluding with him? Dong Hanzong sneered secretly. We can't attack because of the blood oath. In the end, we have to leave now. Otherwise, when Qin Feiyang asks us to kill you guys, we won't dare to disobey. Dong Tianqian transmitted his voice. At least he was able to maintain a rational mind. Greedy for life and afraid of death. Dong Hanzong sneered. Who are you calling greedy for life and afraid of death? If you have the ability, why did you run away when facing Qin Feiyang? If it weren't for the blood oath, would we be so passive? Dong Ping stared at Dong Hanzong angrily. This was simply asking for a yard after getting an inch. Boom. Clang. On the other side, Frenzy and Qin Feiyang had already begun to accumulate power. The evil force was like a tide, continuously pouring into the all-evil sword. Its sharpness was like a volcanic eruption, crazily soaring. At the same time, the 3,000 clones behind Qin Feiyang also activated their ultimate meaning. With the eruption of the dual will of heaven, a terrifying divine might roared in all directions. Kill. Suddenly, the two of them shouted. The all-evil sword tore through the sky and slashed out. Qin Feiyang's 3,000 clones, a total of 28,000 ultimate meaning, also crazily attacked. However, at this moment, Li Feng and Fire Dance, who were standing behind Qin Feiyang, looked at each other. Their eyes suddenly surged with killing intent as they charged towards Qin Feiyang like lightning. That was right. Their target was Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang could feel their killing intent, and his body suddenly trembled. Even Li Feng and Fire Dance were plotting against him? What was going on? Since that's the case, let's stop pretending. After pretending for so many years, it's really a little tiring. The demon ancestor Mu Tianyang, Mu Qing, Dong Jingyang, Long Chen, Long Qin, and so on. Even the monarch, Heavenly Lord Ji, the Supreme, and the Divine King were attacking Qin Feiyang at this moment. Furthermore, all of them had activated their strongest techniques. For example, the fiend ancestor had opened his eye of despair. Mu Tianyang, activate evil eye. If only one or two came to kill him, it could be explained. But now it was all of them. This was very illogical. Was all of this really an illusion? Thinking of this, Qin Feiyang activated the Eye of Life and Death again, and looked at the inner demons and the others. The result was the same as before. There were no changes. This meant that everything that was happening now was real. Why did it become like this? Is someone controlling all of this? Qin Feiyang looked up at the sky. No. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. The series of sudden changes caused his mind to become very chaotic. Thus he neglected the most important point. That is the origin power. That's right. The origin power. Except for Dong Qingyuan and Dong Hanzong, everyone had the origin power. The white-eyed wolf's body had more than 400,000 strands of origin power. But from the beginning to the end, no one had taken out the origin power. The white-eyed wolf was the most obvious. Until his body was torn apart, no one saw the 400,000 strands of origin power on his body. Before, when the mermaid princess self-destructed, no origin power was seen. Such a powerful thing like the origin power couldn't be destroyed by the mermaid princess self-destruction. Then there was only one explanation. These people didn't have the origin power on them now. Without the origin power, it was unrealistic. In other words, these people in front of him might not be real people but illusions. Illusions. But if they were illusions, why couldn't the Eye of Life and Death see through them? Could it be that, suddenly, Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled? The Eye of Life and Death might not be omnipotent. In other words, although the Eye of Life and Death had the ability to see through illusions, it might not be able to see through the illusions here. This was because this was the passage to the mystic realm. It was different from other places. At the thought of this, Qin Feiyang checked his body and found that the 1,000 strands of origin power were hiding in his sea of vital energy. Looking at the white-eyed wolf's soul that was imprisoned next to him, he couldn't find half a strand of origin power. This confirmed Qin Feiyang's conjecture even more. All of this was an illusion. Bang! He didn't hesitate anymore. 1,000 strands of origin power surged out of his body like a tide, condensing into a 3-feet-long sword. With a sharp edge that could tear the sky and earth apart, it charged towards Frenzy and the rest. Ah! A scream could be heard. Frenzy was the first to be killed. His blood splattered across the sky and his soul was destroyed. Looking at the blood all over the sky, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but wonder if this was an illusion, because it was too real. However, he didn't stop. If he really killed the wrong person, then he would have to bear this pain alone. Fire Dance Li Feng, the king Lu Jiajin, Princess Yuxian and the rest also died under the 3-feet-long sword. The void here had already been dyed red with blood. If this was really an illusion, this was too cruel. It was equivalent to letting Qin Feiyang personally kill the companions that he cared about the most. Very soon, there was only one person left at the scene. This person was the inner demons. The inner demons sneered. You killed everyone, don't you feel guilty? Don't you feel uneasy? Guilty? Uneasy, Qin Feiyang muttered. If he really killed the wrong person, he would definitely feel guilty for the rest of his life. But he had no choice, he had to take a gamble. Killing intent flashed in his eyes. He grabbed the 3-feet-long sword and personally killed the inner demons. At this point, everyone had died under his hands. The air was filled with a pungent smell of blood. Qin Feiyang scanned his surroundings and found that he couldn't find a single source of origin energy. It seemed that all of this was indeed an illusion. However, he swept his gaze across the surrounding mountains and rivers, and couldn't help but frown. Everyone had been killed. Why wasn't there any change in this world? Wait a minute. Qin Feiyang patted his head. Suddenly, he remembered that the white-eyed wolf's divine soul was still sealed in the Qi Sea. At this moment, with a wave of his hand, the white-eyed wolf's divine soul appeared. The white-eyed wolf's divine soul sneered. You are indeed ruthless, to actually kill all your friends, companions and brothers. Since they don't exist, what's the harm in killing them? Qin Feiyang said lightly. Do they really not exist? What if these people you have now are all real? At that time, won't you regret it? The white-eyed wolf said. Regret? Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and nodded. Of course I will regret it, but since I have already made such a choice, even if there is regret and pain, I can only bear it silently. After saying that, he waved the long sword in his hand and slashed at the white-eyed wolf's divine soul. Don't kill me. We are brothers. Brothers who grew up together. The white-eyed wolf hurriedly knelt down and looked at Qin Feiyang pitifully. Still want to confuse me? Unfortunately, you are too smart for your own good. Looking at you now, I'm even more sure that you are a fake. Because the white-eyed wolf, even in the face of ice dragon and small beast, has never put down his self-esteem and knelt down to beg for mercy. Qin Feiyang sneered. With a wave of his hand, the 3-foot-long sword swept out and the white-eyed wolf's divine soul was annihilated on the spot. Chapter 46:18. As soon as the white-eyed wolf's soul was destroyed, Qin Feiyang immediately looked around, his eyes full of expectation and anxiety. To be honest, he was really afraid of making a mistake. If he made a mistake and killed the wrong person, he would regret it and blame himself for the rest of his life. Suddenly, the surrounding mountains and rivers gradually began to distort. Looking at this scene, Qin Feiyang was suddenly overjoyed. The mountains and rivers began to distort, indicating that all of this was an illusion. Slowly, not only the mountains and rivers, but the void and the sky also began to distort. Finally, the whole world suddenly shattered like a mirror. Everything disappeared, and what replaced it was a dark area of nothingness. Qin Feiyang glanced around. The joy in his heart could no longer be concealed, because he had seen such a scene before. Back then, when he entered the sky cloud realm from the underworld king's hell, the space-time channel he passed through was probably like this. This meant, now he was in the real channel. Everything that had happened before was an illusion. I finally escaped. Taking a deep breath, Qin Feiyang calmed down the shock in his heart. He had to admit, this illusion was too realistic. Whether it was the white-eyed wolf and the others in the illusion, or the moon fairy princess and the others, every action, every word, including all the reactions, was the same as the real thing. If he hadn't suddenly realized the abnormality of the origin power, he might have been trapped in the illusion forever. He had never seen such a realistic illusion. It was no wonder that the emperor repeatedly warned the inner demons and the others. Such an illusion was completely a kind of torture and destruction. In fact, it was also his fault. He relied too much on the eye of life and death. He always thought that the eye of life and death was omnipotent. All illusions could be seen through. So, at that time, when he opened the eye of life and death and saw that nothing had changed around him, he firmly believed that he must be in the real world, and almost lost his life because of it. The facts prove that the eye of life and death was not omnipotent. Next time, I can't be so blindly confident. Qin Feiyang muttered, exhaled a long breath, turned around and saw more than a dozen figures standing motionlessly on both sides. It was the white-eyed wolf, the madman, the mermaid princess, the monarch and the others. Everyone was in a state of stupefaction. Without exception, their eyes were filled with fear. Beads of sweat the size of beans could be seen on his forehead. Everyone's faces were deathly pale, as if they had fallen into a nightmare. Looks like we're all trapped in an illusion. Qin Feiyang mumbled, and immediately walked towards the mermaid princess. Although the mermaid princess had changed her appearance, it didn't affect Qin Feiyang's feelings for her. His eyes were filled with tenderness. She slowly raised her hand and caressed the mermaid princess's cheek. Previously, when the mermaid princess self-destructed in the illusion, he felt as if the sky had collapsed and his life had lost its meaning. Therefore, He had to cherish the present. Don't wait until you lose it before you know how to cherish it. Wake up. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang said. His voice condensed into a line and drilled into the mermaid princess's ears. If a person was awakened in this way, they would definitely wake up immediately if they were in an ordinary illusion. But now, the mermaid princess didn't respond. What should I do? Qin Feiyang was suddenly burning with anxiety. The emperor said that once she died in the illusion, the original body outside would also die. And he found that. The mermaid princess's hands were trembling. Her cheeks were also as pale as paper. One could imagine that she was in a very bad situation in the illusion at this moment. Wake up, Qin Feiyang said again. The two words wake up were almost roared out. However, the mermaid princess still didn't respond. This time, Qin Feiyang was completely flustered. He could get rid of the illusion entirely because he noticed the abnormality of the origin force. But what about the mermaid princess? After all, it was impossible for everyone's illusion to be the same. It turns out that from the moment I entered the secret realm, I had already fallen into the illusion. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out. Qin Feiyang was refreshed. He quickly turned his head and saw Longchen slowly opening his eyes. Seeing that Qin Feiyang had woken up, Longchen was quite surprised and said with a smile, I thought I was the first to wake up. I didn't expect you to be one step ahead of me. You are indeed the man I admire. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Why did this sound so awkward? Qin Feiyang asked. What illusion did you experience? Immediately, Longchen's expression became extremely strange. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Longchen glanced at the white-eyed wolf and pursed his lips. My illusion has something to do with him. What? Qin Feiyang was stunned. How could it be related to the white-eyed wolf? After entering the secret realm, I appeared in a strange place. There were mountains and rivers and the scenery was pleasant. At that time, all of us were there. Just as we were about to look for the entrance of the passage, the white-eyed wolf suddenly eloped with Longchen. The corner of Longchen's mouth twitched. Eloped? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. Longchen nodded and smiled bitterly. What he was afraid of came true. Then what was your reaction? Qin Feiyang was curious. What else can I do? Of course, I followed my father's instructions and stopped them. Fire Dance also fought fiercely, scolding the white-eyed wolf as a heartless man and fighting with him. Even in the end, my father and the sky-swallowing beast suddenly arrived. My father strongly opposed and wanted to kill the white-eyed wolf. The sky-swallowing beast helped the white-eyed wolf to kidnap the bride. The two of them even fought. In short, it was a mess. Longchen shook his head. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something and said, Guess what the sky-swallowing beast said in the illusion? What did he say? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Longchen said, the sky-swallowing beast said that the white-eyed wolf was his illegitimate son, and he was more than enough to be a good match for my sister. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Illegitimate son? This illusory realm was too desolate. No. The illusion was created according to everyone's thoughts. Qin Feiyang looked at Longchen and asked, Have you ever thought that the white-eyed wolf was the sky-swallowing beast's illegitimate son? Cough cough. Longchen coughed dryly and smiled awkwardly. Indeed, I have thought so. You can't blame me for thinking so. After all, the white-eyed wolf's battle soul is indeed the sky-swallowing beast. Moreover, his fourth special ability is exactly the same as the sky-swallowing beast's. Hearing what you said, you really have proof? The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. That's right. Otherwise, how do you explain the white-eyed wolf's battle soul? However, I have to say that the illusion here is too real. If I didn't find some flaws, I would really believe all of this. Longchen sighed. What flaws? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. I didn't see the white-eyed wolf activate his battle soul, from the beginning to the end. Until the moment of his death. Longchen said. Death. Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked, The white-eyed wolf also died in your illusion. What do you mean? Could it be that he also died in your illusion? Longchen was also puzzled. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded and said with a bitter smile. In my illusory realm, all of you attacked me. My wife even self-detonated in front of me. I almost collapsed. In the end, I also noticed a flaw and was indeed inside the illusory realm. What flaw did you find? Longchen was curious. The power of origin. Until your death, you didn't take out the power of origin. Qin Feiyang said. The flaw in his illusion was the power of origin. The flaw in Longchen's illusion was the white-eyed wolf's battle soul. True enough. The flaw in everyone's illusion was different. One could only find it if they were careful. Qin Feiyang asked curiously, You haven't told me how the white-eyed wolf died in your illusion. Longchen glanced at the white-eyed wolf who stood motionless next to him, shook his head and said with a smile, I killed him. It was because I killed him that I found this flaw. Are you so opposed to the white-eyed wolf being with your sister? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He actually killed the white-eyed wolf with his own hands because of this. I'm not opposed to it. I respect Qin's choice. If she insists on being with the white-eyed wolf, I will fulfill her wish and bless her. But my father's attitude is very firm. Longchen smiled helplessly. Qin Feiyang breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Longchen didn't have any objections, it was fine. Didn't you wake them up? Longchen glanced at the others and asked. I tried, but I couldn't wake them up. I was just about to ask you, is there any way to wake them up? Qin Feiyang looked at the mermaid princess, his eyes full of worry. Because the mermaid princess's face was getting paler and paler, and the sweat on her forehead was getting more and more. Can't wake them up. Longchen frowned and landed beside Longqin. Like Qin Feiyang, he condensed his voice into a line, and went straight to Longqin's sea of consciousness. But the result was, just like the mermaid princess, there was no reaction. This made Longchen's face gloomy. Don't worry, since there are flaws in our illusion, there must be flaws in their illusion too. I believe, with their observation skills, they will definitely find out sooner or later. Qin Feiyang was also very anxious, but now he actually comforted Longchen. Sooner or later. What if we're late and they die in the illusion? So we can't just wait like this. We have to think of a way. Longchen frowned. This was the first time he encountered such a situation, so he was somewhat helpless. What a waste of time. I might as well sleep. Suddenly, another voice sounded. Qin Feiyang and Longchen were shocked and hurriedly turned to look at the mysterious young man. That's right. The owner of this voice was the mysterious young man. You actually got rid of the illusion before me? Looking at Qin Feiyang and Longchen, the young man looked very surprised. Qin Feiyang urged, Let's not talk about this first. Help think of a way to wake them up. Wake them up? The young man looked at the others, yawned, and said, Release your divine consciousness into their sea of consciousness and try to connect with their souls. Maybe then, your divine consciousness can enter their illusion. Hearing this, Longchen immediately released his divine consciousness into Longqin's sea of consciousness. Qin Feiyang also quickly ran to the mermaid princess, and his divine consciousness surged out and swept into the mermaid princess sea of consciousness like lightning. Chapter 46:19. Whether it was Qin Feiyang or Longchen, their divine consciousness successfully entered the sea of consciousness of the mermaid princess and Longqin. Both of their divine souls were quite special. Longqin's divine soul was a pure white holy dragon, exuding a sacred aura. Mermaid princess's divine soul was a mermaid with a golden fishtail and golden wings. Her divine soul was suspended in the middle of the sea of consciousness, exuding a glow all over her body, looking lively and beautiful. But just when Qin Feiyang and Longchen tried to communicate with their divine souls, they found that their divine souls were in a sealed state, and there was no response. If there was no response, how could they communicate? Following that, the two of them simply controlled their divine consciousness and wrapped the mermaid princess and Longqin's divine souls. But before the wrapping was formed, an invisible force emerged and shook off their divine consciousness on the spot. This, Qin Feiyang and Longchen were surprised. This invisible force was not the power of the mermaid princess and Longqin. It was very strange. There was only one explanation. This was the power of the illusion. The power of the illusion could interfere with the people outside? How terrifying was this illusion? Can't it work? The mysterious young man looked at the two of them and asked. The two of them withdrew their divine consciousness and shook their heads at the mysterious young man. It seems that I have underestimated the power of the illusion. The young man frowned. Suddenly, he grabbed the snow python on his shoulder. Qin Feiyang and Long Chen looked at the snow python and were surprised to find that this guy was awake. It was just that they had been napping and did not notice it. Have you slept enough? If you are so lazy, I will stew you. The young man glared at the snow python. The snow python quivered and shook its body quickly. It was suddenly full of energy, and then broke free from the young man's hand and smiled obsequiously. What can I do for you? Just tell me. I want to sleep. The young man said with a dark face. All right. The snow python nodded and its body quickly grew bigger. Then, under the astonished gaze of Qin Feiyang and Qin Haodong, the young man jumped onto the snow python's back and sat down. He leaned against the snow python's head and closed his eyes to take a nap. Sleep? Qin Feiyang and Long Chen looked at each other. They thought that the young man woke up the snow python to help them wake everyone up, but they didn't expect that he would be sleeping on the snow python's back. No. How could it be like this? What kind of situation was it? Why couldn't they be more serious? Just as Qin Feiyang was about to speak, the young man spoke first. I can't do anything about it. They can only rely on themselves to wake up. Qin Feiyang swallowed the words on the tip of his tongue. His face was filled with helplessness. Something's not right. This guy must have a way to wake everyone up. I don't believe that the snow python can rely on its own ability to escape the illusion so quickly. Long Chen transmitted his voice. I think so too. Qin Feiyang mumbled. Although the snow python had followed the young man and transformed into a divine dragon, Qin Feiyang knew about its ability. It wasn't very strong at all. That year, the reason why the young man took a fancy to the snow python was not because of how strong the snow python was, but purely because he wanted to find a means of transportation. Although it was a bit cruel, it was the truth. Wait. Suddenly, Long Chen stared at the snow python. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Long Chen said to himself. It didn't fall into the illusion at all. Ha! Qin Feiyang was shocked. It didn't fall into the illusion? How could it be? Long Chen transmitted his voice. Think carefully. When the young man woke up, did the snow python have any reaction? Qin Feiyang frowned. He didn't notice the snow python at all before. Yes. When the young man woke up, I didn't notice the snow python either. But, think about it. If it really fell into the illusion, the young man would definitely wake it up first. But the young man didn't do anything before. He didn't even care about it. Moreover, when it fell into the illusion, once it woke up, it would definitely make some noise. But the snow python didn't make any noise before. The most important point. No matter how sleepy it is, it can't fall asleep immediately after waking up. Moreover, what is this place? This is the passage to the secret realm. How could it be in the mood to sleep? So the only explanation is that it didn't wake up at all. It has been sleeping since it entered the secret realm. It wasn't affected by the illusion at all. Long Chen transmitted his voice. After such an analysis, Qin Feiyang suddenly realized. That's right. How could it be in the mood to sleep in such a place? Even the young man only took a nap on the snow python's back after getting rid of the illusion and familiarizing himself with the environment. It was impossible. The snow python's mentality was better than the young man's. But the snow python didn't fall into the illusion. How could this be? Everyone here, including the young man, fell into the illusion. How could the snow python escape from the illusion here? There's a problem. Their eyes flashed. Long Chen looked at the snow python and said with a smile. Why don't you help us? Me? Even the Lord can't do anything. What can I do? The snow python shook its huge head. Don't be modest. You didn't fall into the illusion. There must be a way. Qin Feiyang also opened his mouth and said with a smile. You can see through it? The snow python was surprised. Sure enough. Qin Feiyang and the young man looked at each other. Their eyes were full of shock. How did the snow python do it? How could it not be restricted by the illusion? The young man closed his eyes and said, "They have good eyesight. Help them." The snow python pursed its lips. The next moment, its eyebrows split open. Wisps of milky white godly light burst out of it. Then, an eye appeared. This was a pearl-like eye. It was white and flawless, emitting a hazy divine light. And it also contained a magical power. This power was similar to the power of the Eye of Life and Death. But this was indeed not the Eye of Life and Death. Eye of Destruction, all illusions shatter for me. The snow python suddenly shouted in a low voice. That power immediately rushed towards the white-eyed wolf, and the others like a tide. Qin Feiyang quickly said, "Don't help Dong Hanzong, Dong Qingyuan, Princess Yuxian, remove the illusion." Unfortunately, it was too late. The power had already enveloped the three of them. Immediately, everyone who stood motionless in the void woke up one by one. Where is this? The white-eyed wolf and the others' reactions were very real. They looked around, their eyes full of surprise. Obviously, they were all confused by the scene in front of them. "You're awake." Qin Feiyang grabbed the mermaid princess's hand, his face full of concern and tenderness. The mermaid princess looked at Qin Feiyang with a trace of vigilance in her eyes. She also seemed to resist Qin Feiyang's action of grabbing her hand. Seeing this situation, Qin Feiyang's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that what happened to this little girl in the illusion was related to her? Don't be afraid. What you've experienced before is all an illusion. Qin Feiyang comforted her. Illusion? The mermaid princess was stunned. The others, like the white-eyed wolf, lunatic, and Princess Yuxian, when they heard Qin Feiyang's words, their eyes were full of surprise. How could it be an illusion? It was so real, but they were almost in despair. Qin Feiyang let go of the mermaid princess and looked at everyone, saying, "From the moment we entered the secret realm, we had already fallen into the abyss of the illusion. It was the same for me. In the illusion, I was chased by all of you to the point of no return." Everyone was stunned. "Everyone chased after you? Including me?" Lunatic asked. "Yes, everyone." Qin Feiyang nodded. The corner of Lunatic's mouth twitched. He turned to look at the white-eyed wolf and asked curiously, "What is your illusion?" When the white-eyed wolf heard this, he instantly glared at Longchen fiercely. "Why are you staring at me?" Longchen was puzzled. Could it be that the white-eyed wolf's illusion was related to him? The white-eyed wolf said with a dark face, "In my illusion, you sneaked an attack on me from behind. If not for the protection of the origin force, I would have already died in your hands." Cough cough. Longchen coughed dryly, looking very embarrassed. What was going on with this illusion? In his illusion, he killed the white-eyed wolf. Now, in the white-eyed wolf's illusion, he actually sneaked an attack on the white-eyed wolf. Could it be that these illusions were all connected? What about you? Qin Feiyang looked at Lunatic curiously. Me. Cough cough. Lunatic glanced at Princess Moon Fairy. Seeing this, Princess Moon Fairy frowned. "Don't think too much. In the illusion, I only killed you and didn't do anything else to you." Lunatic hurriedly explained. "Then what else do you want to do to me?" Princess Moon Fairy's face darkened. Why did these words sound so ambiguous? "Ha!" Lunatic laughed dryly, changed the topic, and asked, "Then what is your illusion?" Hearing this question, Princess Moon Fairy's face suddenly turned cold as she stared fiercely at Dong Hanzong. "Your Highness, why are you staring at me?" Dong Hanzong had an innocent look. "Get lost!" Princess Moon Fairy coldly shouted, her eyes filled with disgust. Dong Hanzong was stunned. He was very depressed. Who did I provoke? What's the situation? Don't tell me that in her illusion, Dong Hanzong put her on the ground and used all his strength to rub against her? White-eyed wolf secretly said. There is really such a possibility. Otherwise, why would she be so angry when she saw Dong Hanzong? Lunatic secretly laughed. Qin Feiyang was speechless. These two guys, why were their thoughts so dirty? However, from this point, it could be seen that the illusion they experienced didn't all come from their thoughts. It could be someone else's idea and then happen to another person. Dong Hanzong and Princess Moon Fairy were the best examples. Princess Moon Fairy, as long as one was sensible, could see that she hated Dong Hanzong very much. As for Dong Hanzong, he coveted Princess Moon Fairy. So, the illusion that Princess Moon Fairy experienced was actually Dong Hanzong's inner thoughts. True enough. The illusion here couldn't be seen with ordinary eyes. Then how did you wake us up? Dong Tianqian asked. I didn't wake you up. I don't have this ability. It's it. Qin Feiyang pointed at the snow python. Ha! The group of people looked at the snow python in surprise. It actually had this ability? Aren't you going to say thank you? The snow python raised its eyebrows. The eye of recklessness had already closed. Thank you. The group of people was stunned for a moment before quickly cupping their hands to thank it. Princess Moon Fairy hesitated for a moment before lowering her arrogant head and sincerely thanking the snow python. Chapter 46:20. That's more like it. The snow python nodded and smiled in satisfaction. Crazy asked curiously, but then again, how did it help us break the illusion? A mere snow python actually had such a heaven-defying method? Preposterous eye. Qin Feiyang briefly explained the situation. I see. Everyone was enlightened. Preposterous eye. I've never heard of it. It's so powerful. Could it be that it's on par with the 10 strongest fighting souls? Someone was bewildered. Qin Feiyang, Dong Zhengyang, Mu Tianyang, Mu Qing, Ancestor Demon, Lu Jiajin and the rest were stunned. Had the 10 most powerful fighting souls become so worthless? Any random fighting soul would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Cough cough. The snow python coughed dryly and looked a little embarrassed. It smiled and said, compared to the 10 strongest fighting souls, my preposterous eye is still lacking. Because it knew. Most of the owners of the strongest fighting souls were here. Therefore, it was better to be humble. It would not be good if it was targeted by these people. Qin Feiyang was still alright. He was open-minded and did not care about trifles. However, people like Ancestor Demon and Mu Tianyang were not to be trifled with. At least you have some self-awareness. The inner demons laughed secretly. The snow python laughed dryly and explained, my preposterous eye can only break illusions and has no other use. It's unlike the 10 strongest fighting souls that either have heaven-defying lethality or powerful supernatural powers. It's only useful against illusions? Everyone was stunned. Yes. It's basically a useless fighting soul. Because after living for so many years, this is the 3rd time I've encountered illusions. The snow python smiled bitterly. In other words, it had only used the preposterous eye 3 times in its life. Everyone shook their heads and laughed. Don't belittle yourself. It's good stuff that can be useful at critical moments. For example, you saved everyone this time. Only a fighting soul like yours can truly be called a trump card. Qin Feiyang smiled. Hearing this, the snow python looked at Qin Feiyang and felt warmth in its heart. These words were really pleasant to hear. In an instant, it regained its confidence. True enough. This was an attractive man. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, since everyone is fine, then let's go find the entrance to the secret realm. Cough cough. The mermaid princess secretly reminded him. The moon fairy princess is here. You don't have the right to give orders. Qin Feiyang was slightly startled. He glanced at the moon immortal princess and smiled bitterly. He transmitted his voice. I almost forgot about her. She is indeed too eye-catching. I hope she doesn't suspect me. It was actually quite a pity. If the snow python had been a little slower, he and Long Chun would have been able to search the moon fairy princess body for the origin source energy easily. He looked at the moon fairy princess and asked respectfully, Your Highness, do you know where the entrance is? Yes. The moon fairy princess nodded and looked around. Finally, her eyes locked on the east and said, Father said that after entering the passage, we will no longer be able to see the entrance to the secret realm. It will be difficult to determine where it is now. But no matter where it is, as long as we fly towards the east, we will be able to see the entrance sooner or later. Qin Feiyang asked. Then are we going to find the entrance now? Of course. Didn't you just say so? The Moon Fairy Princess said indifferently. Let me lead the way for your highness. Dong Hanzong immediately rushed to the front, a standard bootlicker. Get lost. However, the Moon Fairy Princess did not appreciate it at all. The disgust on her face was undisguised. Dong Hanzong's expression froze. What was going on? Although the Moon Fairy Princess did not like him before, she did not hate him so much. But after coming out of the illusion, she looked at him as if he was a disgusting monster. What exactly did this woman experience in the dreamland? He retreated to the side resentfully. The Moon Fairy Princess ignored him. Not only did she ignore him, but she also moved a few steps to the side as if to maintain a safe distance. Then, she looked at the inner demons and said, Bastard Lu, you go to the front and lead the way. Who are you calling a bastard? The inner demons immediately glared at the Moon Fairy Princess angrily. She even asked him to lead the way? Did she really think of herself as a princess? Ordering others around as she pleased. Besides, wasn't there a bootlicker who took the initiative to let her order him around? Why did he come to me? I'm calling you. The Moon Fairy Princess also glared at the inner demons, not to be outdone. They stared at each other. It was a completely flirtatious posture. Dong Hanzong, who was next to them, clenched his hands tightly when he saw this scene. He was about to go crazy. Calm down. Opportunities are created by oneself. Dong Qingyuan transmitted his voice. Dong Hanzong was stunned and turned to look at Dong Qingyuan. This old thing had seen through his thoughts. Who hasn't seen through your thoughts? It's just that no one said it out loud. Dong Qingyuan said secretly. Dong Hanzong was shocked. Could this be the reason why the Moon Fairy Princess hated him? Hurry up. The Moon Fairy Princess urged. So troublesome. Inner demon cursed angrily. Then she turned around and dashed toward the east. Seeing this, the Moon Fairy Princess revealed a smug smile and quickly chased after them. Let's go. For the time being, don't get into trouble and wait for an opportunity. Dong Qingyuan transmitted his voice to Dong Hanzong and chased after the two at lightning speed. Lu Yintian. Just you wait. Sooner or later, I'll trample you under my feet. I'll let Dong Yuxian know who the #1 genius of the Central Dynasty is. Dong Hanzong stared at the back of the inner demons, his eyes full of jealousy and hatred. Immediately, with a gloomy face, he left silently. Qin Feiyang and the others saw all of this. The inner demons seemed to be in danger. The mermaid princess laughed secretly. What danger can a mere Dong Hanzong bring to him? The white-eyed wolf's face was full of disdain. That's right. Dong Hanzong's threat to him is only secondary. I'm worried about his relationship with the Moon Fairy Princess now. Have you noticed that the Moon Fairy Princess obviously has a soft spot for him alone? Qin Feiyang secretly said. From the Moon Fairy Princess's performance, she does have some feelings for the inner demons. What a headache. I've already warned him not to provoke this woman if there's nothing important. Lu Jiajin rubbed his forehead. He seemed to be quite irritated. How is this the inner demons looking for her? It's obvious that she took the initiative to come to him. Qin Feiyang shook his head helplessly. Previously, Dong Hanzong took the initiative to be a bootlicker, but he was rolled his eyes. However, the inner demons didn't say anything or do anything, but he was targeted by this woman. In fact, to be honest, Qin Feiyang was very happy that the inner demons could find a woman who liked him. Because the inner demons were born because of him. For Qin Feiyang, the inner demons were equivalent to his twin brothers. He naturally hoped that the inner demons could have a good home. If it was another woman, even if it was an ordinary person in the Central Dynasty, he wouldn't have any objections. However, this woman was Dong Yuxian, the emperor's daughter, the granddaughter of the Divine Kingdom's ruler, the princess of the Central Dynasty. Because of her identity, this relationship was destined to end in a miserable tragedy. When the time came, not only Dong Yuxian, but even the inner demons would be hurt. Why are the people around me all ill-fated? Qin Feiyang couldn't figure it out. Longqin, as the daughter of the ice dragon, fell in love with the white-eyed wolf. Now Dong Yuesian was actually interested in the inner demons. If this wasn't ill-fated, then what was? Don't think too much. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Let nature take its course. The mermaid princess comforted him. Qin Feiyang lowered his head to look at the mermaid princess, and secretly smiled. Do you suddenly feel that I'm much better than the white-eyed wolf and the rest? Huh. The mermaid princess was stunned. This question was somewhat inexplicable. I'm single-minded. Not like the white-eyed wolf, who flirts everywhere. Qin Feiyang bared his teeth. The mermaid princess was stunned and speechless. Don't be so narcissistic, okay? Isn't it the truth? Qin Feiyang asked back. He hugged the mermaid princess' waist, looking as intimate as possible. Mind the occasion. Facing Qin Feiyang's sudden sneak attack, the mermaid princess' cheeks instantly turned red and hurriedly pushed Qin Feiyang away. That's right. Do you think we're air? The madman glared at him. What does this have to do with you? Go away. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. What are they muttering at the back? Dong Tianqian, Dong Xian, and Dong Ping walked in front of Qin Feiyang and the rest. They glanced at Qin Feiyang and the rest, their faces full of suspicion. Who knows? Dong Xian pursed her lips. Anyway, it couldn't be a good thing. Actually, I really hate them. But now when I'm with them, I feel especially safe. It's very contradictory. Dong Ping shook his head. I have the same feeling too. Dong Tianqian smiled bitterly. This time, if not for the help of the snow python, he was really not confident that he could escape from the illusion. True enough. The emperor's decision was correct. He allowed Qin Batian to enter the secret realm. Otherwise, let alone successfully entering the secret realm, he might not even have the chance to see the entrance. Actually, we can join forces with them in the secret realm. Dong Xian whispered. No. Isn't joining forces with them like asking a tiger for its skin? There are so many of them, and they are so strong. If we encounter treasures, can we snatch them? Dong Tianqian shook his head decisively. So what do you mean? Dong Xian was suspicious. After entering the secret realm, immediately part ways with them. And the moon immortal. This time, with such a good opportunity, these people will definitely not let her go, so we have to protect her. Speaking of this, Dong Tianqian's eyes flashed and he sneered. But to deal with Dong Hanzong, we can join forces with them. Dong Hanzong. Dong Xian and Dong Ping raised their heads and looked at Dong Hanzong's back in front of them. Their eyes suddenly flashed with killing intent. That year in the 4 continents, Dong Hanzong had plotted against them, and they had always remembered it in their hearts. They only lacked an opportunity. Perhaps this time in the secret realm, they could find this opportunity. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang looked at Lu Jiajin and transmitted his voice. Big cousin, is the illusion here useful against the sovereign divine weapon? Why do you ask this? Lu Jiajin was suspicious. Chapter 46-21. Time passed quietly. 12 to 12 hours had passed, but the entrance to the secret realm still hadn't appeared. What's going on? The inner demons gradually realized that something was wrong. They couldn't help but stop and scan the area ahead. Ahead. It was still a dark void. As if there was no end. It's recorded in the letter that when grandfather entered the passage, it only took him half an hour to find the entrance to the secret realm. Father and mother also only took a little more than 2 hours to find the entrance. But now we seem to have been searching for 6 to 8 hours, but we haven't even seen the shadow of the entrance. The Moon Fairy Princess frowned slightly. There was definitely something strange going on. Wait. Li Feng's eyes suddenly trembled. He looked at everyone and said in surprise, Are we still in the illusion? What? As soon as he said that, everyone's expression changed. Impossible. If we're still in the illusion, my eye of recklessness would know. The snow python shook its head. It was very confident in its eye of recklessness. The Moon Fairy Princess glanced at the snow python and then at the inner demons. Quickly open your eye of life and death. No need. The inner demons shook its head. What's wrong? The Moon Fairy Princess was puzzled. The inner demons said in a deep voice. The eye of life and death can't see through the illusion here. I've already tried when I was trapped in the illusion. Heard that? Everyone's heart sank. What should they do? I believe that we're definitely not in the illusion now. If the direction is right, we'll continue to search. We'll definitely find the entrance to the secret realm. The snow python said again. It was the only way to make everyone look at it in a different light. How could it be doubted? The moon fairy princess frowned and nodded. All right, then let's continue. For now, they could only believe in the snow python and the eye of recklessness. The group set off again. This time, Qin Feiyang didn't say anything. He glanced around the void, his eyes flickering. Suddenly, he seemed to have noticed something. He looked at the young man on the snow python's back. It was unknown when the young man had opened his eyes. The young man looked at the void and seemed to be frowning slightly. This didn't seem like the young man's character. This was because no matter what, the young man was always calm and listless. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He stepped forward and landed on the back of the snow python. Madman and the others looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. The snow python resisted Qin Feiyang at first, but when it thought of Qin Feiyang's methods, it immediately calmed down. In the meantime, seeing Qin Feiyang running over, the young man quickly closed his eyes, as if he was in a deep sleep. The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. What are you pretending for? I'm not asking you to risk your life. I just want to have a chat with you. The young man turned his body sideways and continued to pretend to be asleep. This caused Qin Feiyang to be incomparably furious. Why was he behaving like a child? Get up and have a chat. Qin Feiyang said patiently. The young man was still pretending to be asleep. Qin Feiyang's veins were bulging. He kicked the young man out of the snow python's back like a rubber ball. Ugh. Dong Tianqian, Dong Xian, and Dong Ping looked at this scene in astonishment. This guy was too cruel. He actually dared to kick his ancestor, Qin Batian, in public. Princess Moon Fairy, Dong Hanzong, and Dong Qingyuan were also shocked. Because Qin Feiyang was pretending to be a guardian of Dong Tianqian's family. Since he was a guardian of Dong Tianqian's family, he was naturally Qin Batian's opponent. Moreover, this Qin Batian was so strong. How could a mere guardian dare to provoke him? He even ran over and kicked Qin Batian. Wasn't this the same as plucking the fur from a tiger's butt? Princess Moon Fairy came back to her senses and hurriedly looked at Dong Tianqian. Hurry up and stop him. If he angers Qin Batian, we will all suffer. Dong Tianqian felt bitter. Was this man someone he could stop? Princess Moon Fairy couldn't help but feel suspicious when she saw Dong Tianqian's reaction. Ahem. Don't worry. Qin Batian is a decent person. He won't hold it against him. Dong Tianqian could only force himself to say these words when he saw Princess Moon Fairy's suspicious eyes. Princess Moon Fairy, Dong Qingyuan, and Dong Hanzong were stunned. Qin Batian is a decent person? Dong Tianqian, you must be dreaming. This is a man who dared to barge into the imperial capital mountain, and even wanted to tame a giant star beast as his mount. In the face of such a person, you kicked him flying in front of everyone. And you still want him to not hold it against you? You're really daydreaming. Boom. A terrifying aura exploded. The young man steadied himself. The laziness and sleepiness between his eyebrows instantly disappeared, and was replaced by a chilling aura. However, in the face of this, Qin Feiyang stood on the snow python's back unmoved. The snow python didn't dare to interfere. These two people couldn't be offended at all. Whoosh. The young man rushed in front of Qin Feiyang aggressively. His terrifying aura surged like a tide. Qin Feiyang didn't move at all. He smiled faintly and said, "Can we talk now?" Looking at Qin Feiyang's calm expression, the young man frowned and said angrily, "If it weren't for the fact that you are Uncle D Tian's, but speaking of this." He hurriedly covered his mouth. He looked slightly flustered. "What did you say?" "What Uncle D Tian?" Qin Feiyang looked at him in confusion. "Nothing." The young man hurriedly waved his hand, looking a little guilty. Then he retracted his aura and sat weakly on the snow python's back. He asked, "What do you want to talk about?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "If it weren't for the fact that you are Uncle D Tian's, What was the second half of the sentence? Ditian? Did it have anything to do with him? He had never heard of this name. However, Ditian, the name was quite domineering. Do you want to talk? If you don't, I'm going to sleep, the young man urged impatiently. Qin Feiyang suppressed the doubts in his heart, and also sat on the snow python's back. What's going on? Princess Yuxian, Dong Hanzong, and Dong Qingyuan looked at each other. Previously, when they saw the young man's angry appearance, they thought that Qin Feiyang was definitely going to die. But they didn't expect, in the blink of an eye, the young man retracted his aura, and even sat there and chatted amiably. This person is indeed not bad. Dong Qingyuan looked at Dong Tianqian and said, Yes, yes, yes. Dong Tianqian smiled awkwardly. It was really strange. One was his ancestor, the other was his descendant. How could the grandfather and grandson pair possibly fight? Princess Yuxian glanced at Qin Feiyang, and a trace of seriousness flashed across her eyes. She then looked at the inner demons and said, To save time, activate the dual will of the heavenly Tao and the momentary time, and bring us to find the entrance to the secret realm. You really know how to order people around. The inner demons was extremely angry. On the snow python's back, Qin Feiyang turned to look at the young man and asked, Did you find something? Huh? The young man looked at Qin Feiyang in confusion. Don't play dumb. Earlier, I saw you scanning the void, seemingly deep in thought. That's why I came to look for you. Qin Feiyang said. You're talking about this. The young man looked like he suddenly understood. His eyes turned slightly, and he said calmly, It's like this, I was thinking about something, and it has nothing to do with the illusion here. Come on. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. Did he really think that he was 3 years old? So easy to fool. Okay. The young man had no choice but to compromise. He looked up again and frowned. I really feel that something is wrong here. So we are really in an illusion now. Qin Feiyang was surprised. I'm not sure. The young man shook his head. Qin Feiyang frowned, looked around, and then looked at the white-eyed wolf and the others and murmured. If we are really in an illusion now, is everyone here still an illusion? I'm sure of this. Every single person here is not an illusion. They are all real people. So don't be impulsive. Otherwise you will regret it for the rest of your life. The young man warned. Qin Feiyang's heart skipped a beat. He really wanted to give it a try. However, when he heard this, he immediately dispelled the thought in his heart. Wait a minute. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and looked at the young man warily. What? The young man was suspicious. Qin Feiyang said solemnly, You can't be an illusion that came to confuse me, right? Hearing this, the young man couldn't help but roll his eyes. Whether it was his expression or other things, he was exactly the same as the young man Qin Feiyang once knew. But at this moment, he really didn't dare to be careless. What if everything was still an illusion? If he didn't make a move, wouldn't he be trapped in the illusion forever? If I'm an illusion, you would have died many times. Looking at Qin Feiyang's imagination, the young man was speechless. That's true. Qin Feiyang nodded and temporarily dispelled the doubts in his heart. After pondering for a while, he asked, Can't you see through all this? Even the eye of recklessness and the eye of life and death can't do it. What can I do? The young man shook his head. He wanted to help but couldn't. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. If even the young man couldn't do anything, wouldn't they really be in a desperate situation? I hope I'm thinking too much. He could only pray like this now. They couldn't find the entrance. Maybe they were too far away from the entrance. Time passed bit by bit. Whoosh! Suddenly, a gust of wind sounded. But it was very weak. If one didn't listen carefully, one wouldn't notice it. Qin Feiyang and the others didn't notice it at this time. The inner demons led everyone as fast as lightning. Finally, Lu Jiajin noticed the sound of the wind and immediately pulled the inner demons and said, Stop! The inner demons braked and stopped. The others couldn't help but look at Lu Jiajin suspiciously. Lu Jiajin made a shushing gesture and said in a deep voice, Listen carefully. Everyone tilted their ears and listened carefully. Gradually, Princess Moon Fairy, Dong Tianqian, Dong Ping, Dong Xian, and even the inner demons' faces began to change. There's wind. Could it be the space-time storm that the old emperor mentioned? The inner demons were surprised. What did you say? What old emperor? Don't you have any manners? Princess Moon Fairy immediately glared at him. But at this time, the inner demons were not in the mood to bicker with her, because the sound of the wind was getting louder and louder. They could even feel a gust of wind blowing in their faces. Thank you for all the tips these 2 days. Chapter 46-22. It must be a space-time storm, let's go. The inner demons suddenly roared and immediately activated the dual will of heaven and instant time, rolling up a group of people and turning to the other side. They had to avoid the storm, because the emperor said that the space-time storm here was enough to kill the experts of the will of heaven. These people were all experts of the will of heaven, and none of them had stepped into a new realm, so it was impossible to block the space-time storm. We didn't encounter a space-time storm before. I thought we were lucky, but I didn't expect that what I was afraid of would come. Princess Moon Fairy's face was gloomy. Space-time storm. Is it very strong? Dong Qingyuan and Dong Hanzong were surprised. A group of experts of the will of heaven. Why would they be afraid of a storm? However, facing the two's questions, no one answered. Princess Moon Fairy didn't want to see Dong Hanzong at all. Dong Tianqian, Dong Xian, and Dong Ping also wanted to grind Dong Hanzong's bones to dust, so they naturally wouldn't explain to them. As for the inner demons and Lu Jiajin, they were completely unrelated. To be exact, they all ignored these two people. Everyone's attitude made the two so angry that their teeth itched. The sound of the wind became more and more ear-piercing. The whistling wind also became stronger and stronger. But for now they didn't feel any threat, as if it was just an ordinary wind. But, as time passed bit by bit, the wind turned into a gale. The gale turned into a hurricane. The hurricane turned into a tornado. A terrifying lethality was revealed. Every wind blade that hit their bodies felt as if the edge of a blade was cutting through their skin, causing them to feel an intense pain. In an instant, everyone felt a sense of crisis in their hearts. Teacher, something's wrong. This storm is a bit beyond imagination. Dong Hanzong transmitted his voice. Dong Qingyuan nodded and looked at Qin Feiyang and the others, secretly saying, "These people's expressions are unprecedentedly serious. I'm afraid this storm is not simple. If something really happens later, you have to use your universe domain to protect me." Of course. Dong Hanzong nodded. Protect? You, this old trash, is worthy of my protection? Even if he wanted to protect someone, he would definitely protect someone of value, such as the Moon Fairy Princess. What if Princess Yuxian was moved and offered herself to him? Then he would be the emperor's son-in-law. Wouldn't he soar to the sky then? Just as his imagination was running wild, he suddenly felt a terrifying sense of danger. He hurriedly raised his head to take a look, and his face immediately turned pale with fright. In the void before them, a terrifying black storm surged toward them, emitting a monstrous destructive force. What the hell is this? Dong Qingyuan's face instantly turned pale. They had never seen such a terrifying and spectacular storm. Retreat! Princess Yuxian exclaimed. Such a large-scale storm almost cut off the void in front of them. They couldn't see the end of it. It was impossible to go around it. Now, there was no time to go around it. The inner demon's eyes darkened. They swept everyone up and decisively turned around and rushed in the direction they came from. The speed of the dual wills of the heavenly Tao in the instantaneous time was extremely fast. But the space-time storm was even faster. They surged towards Qin Feiyang's group, covering the sky and covering the earth. Dong Hanzong roared in shock and anger. Why is there such a terrifying storm in the world? It was just a storm, but it made him, an expert of the heavenly Tao, feel a strong sense of danger. Quick! Use the origin energy to protect yourself. Princess Yuxian decisively gave the order. Boom! The inner demons Lu Jiajin, Dong Tianqian, Dong Xian, and Dong Ping instantly took out about 1,000 origin energy and formed a barrier to protect the people around them. I'm also here to slack off. The young man got up from the snow python's back and walked in front of Dong Tianqian. The snow python also turned into the size of a palm and landed on the young man's shoulder. Why did you come to me? Dong Tianqian wanted to cry but had no tears. He could only open the barrier and let the young man in. If he dared to say no, the young man would take out his origin energy and destroy his barrier. He couldn't compare to the young man. The young man's origin energy was many times stronger than the origin energy of the theocracy. Moreover, the emperor gave him a total of 2,000 origin energy. If the young man destroyed it now, there would only be 1,000 left. 1,000 origin energy. If it was outside, he would be invincible, but in the secret realm he might not even have the strength to protect his life. What about us? Dong Hanzong and Dong Qingyuan looked at the group of people. Everyone had the protection of the origin energy barrier, but they didn't. Moreover, no one invited them to take refuge. Princess Yuxian said expressionlessly, Dong Qingyuan can come in, but Dong Qingyuan, you are not allowed to come in. Dong Qingyuan was ecstatic and quickly ran into Princess Yuxian's barrier. Dong Hanzong's body stiffened, and his face instantly turned ugly. In such a dangerous situation, she actually left him alone? He looked at the inner demons and Lu Jiajin. The two ignored him. Suppressing his anger, he looked at Dong Tianqian and the other two. Sorry, it's full. We can't stand. Dong Tianqian smiled coldly. Think about how you treated us in the 4 great continents. Now you want us to help you? Don't daydream. Good. I don't believe that without you, I can't stop these storms. Dong Hanzong was so angry that he laughed. He felt like an abandoned orphan. Boom. The next moment, Qiankuan domain opened. Invincible body. With a low roar, the invincible rune appeared and merged into his body. When the invincible rune merged into his body, it was the strongest state of the invincible body. Woo-woo. The wind whistled like thunder. A few breaths later, the storm swept over and drowned the group of people. The terrifying aura hit the barrier, causing Qin Feiyang and the others to frantically retreat uncontrollably. What a powerful impact. Everyone was shocked. Even the barrier formed by the power of origin was distorting. If it were them, they would probably be buried under the storm in an instant, their bodies and souls destroyed. The emperor did not lie to them. This storm was completely enough to kill a will of heaven powerhouse. Qin Feiyang and the others were protected by the origin energy, so they were only a little embarrassed. But Dong Hanzong, in fact, his domain also displayed extremely strong strength. However, as the space-time storm became more and more violent, his invincible state gradually collapsed and disintegrated. This made his heart panic to the extreme in an instant. The invincible body, during the Battle of the 4 Continents, even Qin Feiyang's 3,000 incarnations couldn't break it, but at this moment, it couldn't block this space-time storm. I still have an immortal body. Seal power. Haotian power. Qiankuan power. Dong Hanzong roared. The blue veins on his neck bulged. The Haotian rune appeared, and he activated the ultimate law. Under the blessing of the Haotian rune, the dual will of heaven erupted, and with a wave of his hand, the ultimate law rushed into the space-time storm. He wanted to rely on his powerful strength to forcefully destroy the storm. However, when the ultimate law rushed into the storm aggressively, it didn't even set off the slightest wave, and was directly swallowed by the space-time storm. So strong. Qin Feiyang and the others watched this scene from within the barrier, and their hearts were in turmoil. The ultimate law of the dual will of heaven didn't even have the qualifications to shake the space-time storm? Dong Hanzong was dumbfounded on the spot. This was too ridiculously strong. From the current situation, even the ultimate law of life and death couldn't shake these storms. Gotcha. Suddenly, an invincible rune appeared in Dong Hanzong's body, and it shattered into pieces. Oh no. This made Dong Hanzong's eyelids twitch. The shattering of the first invincible rune meant that the invincible body had reached its limit. In fact, even the barrier formed by the origin force was distorted. How could the invincible body block these space-time storms? Could it be that the invincible body was stronger than the origin force? It was impossible. It was too easy for the origin force to destroy the invincible body. Because the origin force was the power of a world, It was far from the origin force and 3,000 incarnations. Your Highness. Dong Hanzong looked at Princess Yuxian and called out. However, Princess Yuxian turned a deaf ear. Lu Yintian, Lu Yinfeng. Dong Hanzong looked at the inner demons and Lu Jiajin again, his face full of anxiety. If this went on, he would inevitably be buried under the storm. Did you hear that? It seems like someone is calling us. The inner demons turned to look at Lu Jiajin and asked, Is there? Lu Jiajin was suspicious. Yes. I don't know which dog is calling us. Forget it, I don't care. When the storm is over, we will continue to look for the entrance to the secret realm. The inner demons shook his head. From the beginning to the end, he didn't look at Dong Hanzong. Looking at the two echoing each other, Dong Hanzong was furious to the extreme. He was also very sensible. He didn't ask Dong Tianqian and the other two for help, because he knew that Dong Tianqian and the other two would not help him. In their hearts, they couldn't wait for him to die. Kacha. The second invincible rune appeared and shattered. This made Dong Hanzong even more terrified. What should he do? Was he really going to die here? He couldn't accept it. They had already entered the passage, and were only one step away from the secret realm. Your Highness, I don't know why you dislike me, but I'm really innocent. I didn't do anything, you can't treat me like this. In despair, he looked at the Moon Fairy Princess again and cried out. The Moon Fairy Princess frowned. Yes. What did he do to you in the illusion? The inner demons looked at the Moon Fairy Princess curiously. It's none of your business. The Moon Fairy Princess's face was full of anger. The inner demons rolled his eyes and laughed. Don't tell me he did something indecent to you in the illusion? Get lost. The Moon Fairy Princess flew into a rage when she heard this. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other. Sure enough, this was the case. This Dong Hanzong was really innocent. Just because of the illusion, the Moon Fairy Princess hated him so much. Your Highness, not for the sake of the monk, but for the sake of the Buddha. I went to the secret realm to help your father, His Majesty, find the profound truth of the strongest law. I even made a blood oath. So no matter what happened to you in the illusion, you can't leave me in the lurch. Dong Hanzong roared, because the third invincible rune had shattered. Chapter 46-23. Princess Yuxian frowned. Your Highness. What happened in the illusion doesn't exist at all. You can't vent your anger on him just because he offended you in the illusion. It's not fair to him. Dong Qingyuan also spoke. He was now alone and helpless. The inner demons would definitely kill him. Princess Yuxian didn't like him very much now. As for Dong Tianqian and the other two, although they were still talking to him on the surface, anyone who wasn't a fool could tell that they looked down on him from the bottom of their hearts. Therefore, he had to protect Dong Hanzong. Dong Hanzong was now his only hope. As long as Dong Hanzong could rise, he could also benefit from it. But he didn't know. Among everyone, the one who looked down on him the most was Dong Hanzong. Now, he still wanted to benefit from Dong Hanzong? Wasn't that asking for humiliation? He was afraid that when he was betrayed by Dong Hanzong, he would have to count the money for him. Princess Yuxian frowned and looked at the inner demons. Let him go into your enchantment. What the hell? The inner demons looked at her in astonishment. If you want to help him, let him go into your enchantment. Why do you let him into my enchantment? You don't like him, but do you think I like him? Dong Yuxian turned a deaf ear, and turned her head to look elsewhere. She meant that she had already said that she would help him. It was up to him whether he saved him or not. The inner demon's face darkened. This woman really needed to be taught a lesson. Crack. The fourth invincible rune shattered. Dong Hanzong ran to the inner demon's enchantment, and looked at the inner demons who didn't open the enchantment. His face was full of anxiety. If it was any other time, he would have already been angry. But now, although he was full of anger, he could only endure it. Because he knew the character of the inner demons too well. They were lawless people who didn't care about the law. Once they were angered, even if it was Dong Yuxian's order, they would directly ignore it. Count yourself lucky. The inner demons snorted and finally let Dong Hanzong enter the enchantment. The moment he entered the enchantment, the fifth invincible rune shattered. This caused Dong Hanzong to break out in a cold sweat. True enough. Origin energy was still the strongest. Time slowly passed. The group of people stood in the storm, unable to move forward. They could only wait for the storm to pass. Because the resistance was simply too terrifying. It was already not easy to stay where he was without being blown away. However, there seemed to be no end to this storm, and it never stopped. How long do we have to wait? Everyone couldn't help but frown. Don't be trapped in this storm forever. Because if he was trapped here forever, even if he had the protection of the origin energy, he would still be trapped here in the end. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He looked at the Moon Immortal Princess and said, "Your Highness, we can actually use our origin force to shatter the space-time storm and forcefully break through." Yes. If the origin energy can block these storms, it can definitely shatter them as well. Princess Yuxian was stunned. But the prerequisite is that you have enough origin energy. We only have 1,000 left. It shouldn't be enough. The eyes of the inner demons sparkled. It's all right. I have it. Princess Yuxian waved her hands, and a large amount of origin energy appeared, exuding dazzling 5-colored divine lights. So much. Qin Feiyang and the group were shocked. In fact, Qin Feiyang and the inner demons said this to see how much origin energy Dong Yuxian had. Right now, Dong Yuxian took out a large amount of origin energy without hesitation. According to their guess, there were at least 10,000 strands of origin energy in this large amount of origin energy. She was really generous. Under such circumstances, Dong Yuxian definitely wouldn't reveal her true strength and take out all the origin energy. Therefore, apart from the 10,000 strands of origin energy, she definitely had more with her. Clang. Dong Yuxian lifted her hands and waved. The 10,000 strands of origin energy immediately turned into a long sword and slashed at the space-time storm in front of her. Bang. True enough. As long as there was enough origin energy, even the space-time storm could be destroyed. Wherever the long sword went, the space-time storm was annihilated. It almost split the storm in front into two. Let's go. Princess Yuxian looked at the inner demons and shouted. The inner demons immediately activated the moment of time. The dual willpower of the heavenly Tao followed behind the long sword and sped away at lightning speed. Time flew by. About a few hours passed. The group finally passed through the space-time storm. They looked at the calm void in front of them, and then turned to look at the billowing waves and the space-time storm that was whizzing into the distance. They felt as if they were dreaming. The white-eyed wolf activated the dual willpower of the heavenly Tao and the moment of time. It actually took him several hours to pass through the storm. One could imagine how big the space-time storm was. If they continued to stay where they were and waited for the storm to pass, every minute and every second would be torture. Even the space-time storm has appeared. Everything that we are seeing now shouldn't be an illusion. Qin Feiyang mumbled. The emperor had said that the illusion here was very scary. It was possible that one would be trapped in 3 or 4 illusions at the same time. When one thought that one had escaped from the illusion and gotten rid of the danger, in fact, one was still in the illusion. This was the scary part of the illusion in the passageway. It was best that this kind of thing didn't happen to them. Otherwise, whether it was the physical body or the mind, they would be tortured. Look. Suddenly, Dong Ping pointed to the void in front of him, his face full of joy. Qin Feiyang and the rest looked up, and saw that at the end of the void in front of them, there seemed to be the outline of a giant mountain. But because it was too far away, they couldn't see it clearly. Could it be the entrance to the secret realm? Everyone looked at each other, and immediately rushed over. However, as the distance got closer and closer, their speed also got slower and slower. A trace of horror gradually crept up in their eyes. In the end, they all stopped at the same time, their eyes full of fear. They saw that the giant shadow in front of them was not a mountain at all, but a giant beast. That's right. That was a giant beast. It was lying in the void with its eyes closed, as if it was in a deep sleep. Far away, one could hear its heartbeat, deafening like thunder. It was more than 10,000 feet long, lying in the void. If it stood up, How huge would its body be? It's the first time I've seen such a big rat in my life. The white-eyed wolf murmured. Yes, that giant beast was a big rat. But it was different from ordinary rats. Its fur was purple like satin, shining with a hazy luster. Those foreclaws were like 4 giant mountains, giving off an extremely strong sense of oppression. Its tail was like a giant python, with a wave of its tail, enough to shatter mountains and rivers. This is the giant beast that guards the entrance to the secret realm. The Moon Fairy Princess was excited and said happily. Although this giant beast was very scary, as long as they found this giant beast, it meant that they found the entrance to the secret realm. So it was a joyous thing. We're finally going to get out of this damned place. The others were also very happy. No matter how dangerous the secret realm was, they didn't want to stay in this passage any longer. The Moon Fairy Princess said in a low voice, Father said that this giant beast usually won't wake up, so be careful and don't make any noise. Do I need you to say that? Hurry up and find the entrance. The inner demons urged. You. The Moon Fairy Princess glared at the inner demons. Would they feel uncomfortable if they didn't sing a different tune for a day? It's best to restrain your aura. Lu Jiajin said and instantly retracted his aura to the extreme, then flew toward the giant beast. Qin Feiyang and the others also retracted their aura and followed. The group of people didn't even dare to breathe loudly, especially Dong Qingyuan. Looking at the giant beast in front of him, his eyes were filled with fear. If this giant rat stood up, it might not be much smaller than the giant beast of Starry Sky. There's no entrance in front. They didn't get too close and kept a distance of tens of thousands of miles from the giant rat. They searched the void in front of the giant rat, but couldn't find the entrance to the secret realm. The group of people tiptoed toward the back of the giant rat. However, when they reached the back, they didn't see the entrance to the secret realm. What's going on? The entrance isn't here? Everyone frowned at once. Didn't they say that looking at the giant beast was equivalent to seeing the entrance? Where was the entrance now? Was it eaten by the giant rat? Look at the giant beast's chin. Suddenly, Frenzy whispered. Everyone looked over, and their expressions froze. Finally, they found the entrance to the secret realm. It was also a tall stone door. But compared to the door of the secret realm outside, it was much smaller, about 100 feet or so. There was only a door frame and no door, so they could go in directly. But this stone door was now in the giant rat's arms. This giant rat was lying there like a dog with its head on the stone door, and its 2 front legs hugging the stone door, as if it was hugging a pillow or a toy. In other words, now they had to think of a way to loosen the giant beast's claws to enter the stone door. How dare they? What if he woke up the giant rat when he moved it? What do we do now? Everyone was a little helpless. Dong Tianchen, Dong Ping, and Dong Xian couldn't help but look at Qin Feiyang and Long Chen, because these two had always been very resourceful. We definitely can't touch its claws. Once it wakes up, the consequences will be unimaginable. So, we only have one way now. Long Chen smiled wryly. Qin Feiyang looked at Long Chen and couldn't help but shake his head with a wry smile. It seemed that both of them had the same idea. Yes. Now we can only wait for it to turn over and loosen the stone door. Lu Jiajin sighed. Qin Feiyang looked at Lu Jiajin, as expected of his cousin. He was as calm and wise as ever. If it was someone else, there was a high possibility that they would choose to take the risk. Wait for it to turn over? How long do we have to wait? What if it doesn't have the habit of turning over when it sleeps? Won't we have to wait until the end of time? The inner demon's mouth twitched. But it seemed that there was no better way than this. Then let's wait. Quiet down, don't touch it recklessly. Princess Moon Fairy said, glancing at Dong Hanzong as if she was implying something. Dong Hanzong felt wronged. Even if he was given 100 guts, he wouldn't dare to act recklessly now. Qin Feiyang suddenly thought of something and turned to look at the young man. He wanted to see the young man's reaction or ask him if he had any ideas. But he didn't expect that the young man was actually standing there and dozing off. He was really speechless. Chapter 46-24. This guy is probably the reincarnation of the god of sleep. Qin Feiyang shook his head and looked at the giant rat covered in purple hair. It was really a headache. Then they waited silently. Other than waiting, there was no other way. This wait did not last for a few hours. Instead, it lasted for days and days. Because no one knew when the giant rat would turn over. It could be in the next moment, a few days, a few years, decades, or centuries. I hope we don't have to wait here for 10,000 years. Dong Tianqian sighed. At that time, they would not have to enter the arcane realm, and could leave directly. Who knows? Dong Xian smiled bitterly. From the moment they entered the door of the arcane realm, they had already started calculating the time. If they waited here for 10,000 years and the giant rat did not turn over, then they could go back directly. Days passed. Suddenly, half a month later, the purple giant rat moved. Qin Feiyang and the others had been paying close attention to the giant rat's situation. Looking at this scene, they suddenly became nervous and expectant. The giant rat slowly raised its head, but it did not open its eyes. It opened its bloody mouth and yawned. It was this yawn that a terrifying storm suddenly surged out of its body. Space-time storm. Qin Feiyang and the others were shocked. That's right. This was the space-time storm. They never thought that the space-time storm would come from this. How terrifying was the strength of this giant rat. A storm born from a yawn could instantly kill a powerhouse of the heavenly axiom? This scene was like a bolt out of the blue for everyone. It was too shocking. In the past, they were still wondering where this space-time storm came from, and how it could have such terrifying lethality. However, they did not expect that it was the breath of the giant rat. This giant rat's strength could definitely kill them in an instant. Should we take out the origin energy? Dong Qingyuan asked. They were so close to the giant rat. If they took out the origin energy, it might wake up. However, if they did not take out the origin energy, they would die under this space-time storm. In other words, they had no choice at all. They could only take out the origin energy. So this question was equivalent to nonsense. Let's retreat first. Try to retreat as far as possible. Princess Moon Fairy looked at the inner demons. Although the inner demons were unhappy that the Moon Immortal Princess kept ordering him around. Now was not the time to be calculative. He immediately activated his dual will of the heavenly Tao and momentary time, and led the group away. The aura of the heavenly axiom did not awaken the giant rat. The group of people kept retreating. Finally, a space-time storm swept over. He couldn't hesitate any longer. Princess Yuxian waved her hand, and several thousand strands of origin energy appeared, and enveloped everyone. The next moment, the space-time storm surged forth. They used all their strength to stabilize their bodies and prevent themselves from being blown away. The space-time storm this time was much smaller than the previous one. It did not last for long, and was gone in a few hundred breaths. Just as the group of people heaved a sigh of relief, they suddenly felt a bone-piercing chill, causing the hairs on their bodies to stand on end. They swallowed their saliva and slowly looked up. Immediately, they saw a pair of huge eyes staring at them from the front. The owner of these eyes was none other than the greater rat. This monster is awake. Everyone felt as if they had been struck by lightning. Their hearts were instantly filled with fear. Run. Scatter and run. Don't stay together, lest it catches all of us in one fell swoop. Run while looking for an opportunity to enter the arcane realm. Dong Yuxian shouted. Whoosh! As her voice fell, the group of people immediately scattered in all directions and fled in fear. But they did not completely disperse. Qin Feiyang was with the mermaid princess. The white-eyed wolf was with Fire Dance. Long Chun was with Long Qin. The king was with Heavenly Lord Ji. The divine king was with Ji Zun. In short, there had to be a companion by his side. And it had to be someone he trusted the most. For example, Mu Qing. He was with Mu Tianyang because they trusted each other the most. So many people actually came. This is the first time I've seen this. Since you're all here, accompany me to have some fun. The greater rat suddenly grinned. Its voice was like a bell, deafening. Then, its huge claws covered the sky and slapped toward Qin Feiyang and the others. Hanzong faster. Dong Qingyuan roared and his face was pale. He was with Dong Hanzong. Dong Hanzong's eyes darkened. He activated his Qian Kuan domain and Haotian runes. He also activated the dual will of Heavenly Path and momentary time to escape with Dong Qingyuan. Boom! The greater rat's claws fell and slapped the void. The void collapsed on the spot. Although Qin Feiyang and the others dodged the claws, the terrifying aura surged over. They were all covered in blood as if they had been hit hard. So powerful. Everyone could not help but feel their hair stand on end. This was an existence that could not be defeated. Suddenly, Princess Yuesian looked at Qin Feiyang, the king, and Heavenly Lord Ji. How could it be the purple gold dragon blood? Was she seeing things? She rubbed her eyes and looked at the three of them again. The blood flowing from her body was still the purple gold dragon blood. The purple gold dragon blood was the bloodline power that only the purple gold divine dragon had. Then, she seemed to have discovered something again, and her eyes fell on the white-eyed wolf. The white-eyed wolf's blood was also golden. Oh no. They all realized this as well. But now it was too late to hide it. Forget it. We have already entered the secret realm anyway. Qin Feiyang did not hide it anymore. The dual will of Heavenly Path burst out, and pulled the mermaid princess to escape. You are Qin Feiyang. Dong Hanzong and Dong Qingyuan also noticed Qin Feiyang. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Why are you here? Dong Tianchen, how do you explain this? Dong Hanzong roared. He never thought that this fierce person would come to the secret realm, and he even pretended to be a guest of Dong Tianchen's clan. I don't know. Just like in the illusion, Dong Tianchen refused to admit it. Let's not care about this first. Run. Princess Yuxian came back to her senses and looked at the giant claw coming at them again and shouted. Beast, I'll fight it out with you. Suddenly, an angry roar was heard. Qin Feiyang was shocked and quickly turned his head to look. Seeing that Li Feng had no hope of escaping, he turned around and activated the puppet real body to kill the giant claw. No. This scene made Qin Feiyang's face change color and quickly roared. However, it was too late. Li Feng and the puppet real body rushed forward. More than a dozen ultimate laws collided with the giant claw. However, it did not cause any damage to the giant claw. The giant claw crushed the dozens of ultimates as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Then a palm landed. Accompanied by a painful scream, Li Feng and the three true bodies of the puppets were killed on the spot. Blood splattered across the sky. Li Feng. Qin Feiyang roared. The white-eyed wolf's face was also pale. Li Feng. Princess Yuxian murmured. Seeing the giant claw coming again, she roared. Run, run, don't think about entering the secret realm for the time being. Before, she was still thinking of finding an opportunity to break through the stone door and enter the secret realm. But now it seemed that it was impossible to find such an opportunity. At present, it was better to get rid of the giant rat first. Whoosh. Everyone was using all sorts of methods to flee for their lives. So boring. Can't even take a slap. In that case, I'll send all of you to hell. The giant rat laughed and slowly got up. Qin Feiyang and the others turned their heads to look and couldn't help but turn pale. The giant rat lying in the void was about 10,000 feet tall. But now, the giant rat that stood up was several times bigger. It was simply an unattainable mountain. Who should I start with? The giant rat glanced at the group of people, its eyes flashing fiercely. Suddenly, its eyes locked onto Dong Qingyuan and Dong Hanzong. This realm is a bit interesting. The giant rat grinned. Its body that was tens of thousands of feet tall suddenly appeared above Dong Hanzong and Dong Qingyuan. So fast. Dong Hanzong's expression changed. Now he had activated the Haotian rune, and had double will of heavenly axiom. He thought that even if he died, he wouldn't die first because except for Qin Feiyang and the inner demons, no one was faster than him. But he didn't expect that the giant rat would target his Qiankuan domain. The realm that he was proud of, the realm that he had pinned his hopes of escaping, had actually brought him a fatal disaster at this moment. Faster. Dong Qingyuan urged. Urging, besides urging, what else can you do? Dong Hanzong roared. At this moment, his usual disguise was directly torn apart. You. Dong Qingyuan looked at Dong Hanzong in disbelief. How could he talk to him with such an attitude? Old thing. If it weren't for your value, I would have killed you long ago. Dong Hanzong grabbed Dong Qingyuan's neck. What are you doing? Dong Qingyuan roared in horror. Go to hell. Dong Hanzong smiled sinisterly and raised his hand to throw Dong Qingyuan at the giant rat. He wanted to use Dong Qingyuan to buy himself some time to escape. Dong Hanzong, you'll die a horrible death. Dong Qingyuan roared with resentment. Even if I die, you'll die first. Dong Hanzong snorted coldly. He activated the momentary time and fled without looking back. This was human nature. At the moment of crisis, the ugliness of human nature was exposed. As for the giant rat, its eyes were full of contempt as it looked at Dong Qingyuan, who flew up. It directly slapped with its claws. With a scream, Dong Qingyuan's blood splattered in the air. Following closely, it stared at Dong Hanzong. That playful gaze was like a cat catching a mouse. It was obviously the mouse. Whoosh! As it took a step forward, it instantly crossed time and space and appeared in front of Dong Hanzong. What? Dong Hanzong's expression changed. He hurriedly braked and turned to escape in the other direction. Hey! The giant rat bared its teeth. It took another step and instantly blocked in front of Dong Hanzong. Dong Hanzong suddenly felt extreme despair and roared. There are so many of you. Why don't you go after them? Why come after me? Don't worry, all of you will die. It's just a matter of whether you die sooner or later. The giant rat smiled viciously. It lifted its giant tail, like a majestic mountain ridge, and with a deafening sound of wind and thunder, it slapped toward Dong Hanzong. Beast, I'll fight it out with you. Dong Hanzong roared. All the major runes appeared and merged into his body as he madly attacked the giant rat. Accompanied by a loud bang, all the major runes that had merged into his body earlier were all shattered in an instant. Puff! Dong Hanzong spat out a mouthful of blood. Following closely, the giant tail rolled over. Dong Hanzong roared unwillingly and died on the spot. Chapter 46-25. Dead. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at this scene and found it hard to accept. Dong Hanzong was such a difficult person to deal with, but now he died just like that? Dong Qingyuan was nothing. Apart from the protection of the emperor, he was no threat at all. But Dong Hanzong, they had tried to kill him several times but failed. Especially the last time in Hanzong City. With such a meticulous plan, they could still kill their way to Hanzong City. However, at this moment, this greater rat only needed to wave its claws to destroy both its body and soul. Although they had always wanted Dong Hanzong to die, this result was really hard to accept. Who's next? The giant rat glanced at Qin Feiyang and the others. Everyone's heart was in their throats in an instant. This was a matter of selecting soldiers and generals. Whoever was selected would be the death of that person. How could they not be nervous? We can't escape. Let's fight it. There might still be a glimmer of hope. The madman's eyes were gloomy. The giant rat's speed was too fast. They could kill it one by one until the last person was killed. Princess Yuxian took a deep breath, looked at Qin Feiyang and said, I think so too. Since we're going to die sooner or later, we might as well fight it out. Now was not the time to care about personal grudges. After all, they were all about to die. Only by surviving could they do other things. Qin Feiyang looked at Long Chen, the inner demons, Lu Jiajin, the king, and the others. Everyone agreed. Then let's fight it out. As Qin Feiyang's voice fell, 3,000 incarnations were activated. Long Chen shouted, Everyone, activate your ultimate meaning, and let Qin Feiyang's Eye of Heaven duplicate. Boom. In an instant, one ultimate meaning after another appeared. The demon ancestor, Heavenly Lord Ji, and the king looked at each other. 3,000 incarnations were activated, and various ultimate meanings roared out. The inner demons also activated their Demon King true body. The four of them and Qin Feiyang were the main force. Long Chen looked at Qin Feiyang and said in a deep voice, Now is a race for time, don't drag it out for too long. Understood. Qin Feiyang nodded. Behind him, A time array appeared beneath the feet of the 3,000 incarnations. I'll go first. Long Chun growled and opened his domain of divinity. In an instant, it merged with the void, and the power of rules emerged. However, just controlling the rule force, Long Chun was already sweating profusely. How can the rule power here be so strong? This greatly surprised Long Chun. Even the power of rules of the divine kingdom would not be so difficult to control. However, the harder it was to control, the stronger the lethality of the rule force. Boom. With a wave of his hand, the rule-bending force that filled the sky instantly turned into a torrent that charged towards the greater rat from all directions. This is the god's domain. He is indeed ridiculously strong, Princess Moon Fairy murmured. The greater rat was surprised. Looking at the rule-bending force that surged in all directions, it joked. The people who came to the secret realm this time are not bad, but in front of me, they are all ants. Following the greater rat's arrogant laughter, it opened its bloody mouth and a shocking scene appeared. The surging rule-bending force was all sucked into its mouth. This, Long Chun was of course dumbfounded. Isn't this a little too ridiculously strong? Such a difficult-to-control rule-bending force was swallowed in one gulp? This was not easy to deal with. Eye of despair, eye of evil open. Suddenly, the voices of Ancestor Demon and Mu Tianyang rang out. The two strongest battle souls appeared out of nowhere. The aura of despair and evil immediately turned into an invisible wave that surged towards the greater rat. Mental attack. Is it useful? The greater rat's eyes were filled with contempt. His body trembled, and a powerful aura gushed out like the tide. The power of despair and evil was annihilated on the spot. How do we fight this? Ancestor Demon and Mu Tianyang were stunned. The two strongest battle souls actually couldn't affect the greater rat at all? Let's see what our fate is like. The white-eyed wolf looked at Dong Xingyang and said. Dong Xingyang said, I've already seen it. It's a narrow escape. A narrow escape. The white-eyed wolf murmured. Suddenly he laughed out loud. Everyone looked at him in confusion. Why was he going crazy at this time? As the saying goes, there's still a slim chance of survival. The white-eyed wolf took a step forward. Battle soul, sky-swallowing beast appeared. Very strong, isn't it? Let's see how strong you can be after I deprive you of your cultivation. Boom. In this place, a strong wind suddenly blew. The power of the second innate supernatural ability rushed towards the greater rat with an overwhelming force. The greater rat looked at the white-eyed wolf's battle soul, and its pupils seemed to shrink. But then, it sneered and said contemptuously, You little reptile, you want to deprive me of my cultivation? Boom. A monstrous power, like a raging wave, drowned the sky and instantly swallowed the white-eyed wolf. The battle soul, sky-swallowing beast, was shattered on the spot. The white-eyed wolf also let out a scream as its body was torn apart. Brother wolf. White-eyed wolf. Wolf cub. The white-eyed wolf, madman, fire dance, and the others all roared angrily. The mermaid princess immediately opened her eye of life, and a majestic life energy surged towards the white-eyed wolf. Don't worry, I won't die yet. The white-eyed wolf's voice sounded, and a terrifying aura suddenly emerged. This was the power of the origin. On the white-eyed wolf's body, there were more than 400,000 strands of the power of the origin that turned into a barrier, protecting the white-eyed wolf inside. However, even this power of the origin couldn't block the power of the greater rat. The barrier continued to distort. The power of the origin was constantly being obliterated. Bastard, I'm going to kill you. Madman saw this and the all-evil sword appeared. The evil power in his body poured out without reservation, and instantly poured into the all-evil sword. The all-evil sword erupted with a world-destroying edge, and crazily attacked the greater rat. The root of all evil. The true body of all evil. I didn't expect that in this world, there would really be someone who can fuse with the root of all evil. But in front of me, it's still not enough. An ant should have the awareness of an ant. The greater rat disdainfully waved its giant claws, and with a loud crack, the all-evil sword directly shattered in the void. Madman spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face was pale. Why is it so powerful? What kind of existence is this? Princess Yuxian and the others watched this scene, and their bodies trembled. The all-evil sword, God's domain, and the white-eyed wolf's soul, the heaven-swallowing beast, were all heaven-defying existences. But now, in front of the greater rat, they were like newborn babies completely crushed. Until this moment, they finally understood the Emperor's instructions. Don't ever wake up this giant beast, otherwise the consequences would be unimaginable. There was no chance of winning at all. At this moment, Qin Feiyang's 3,000 incarnations finally replicated all the ultimate mysteries. Kill. Li Feng's death and the white-eyed wolf's heavy injuries made Qin Feiyang's eyes turn red. An angry roar. The ultimate mysteries that filled the sky suddenly attacked the greater rat. At this moment, the surrounding void collapsed crazily. It was like the scene of doomsday. Kill. The demon ancestor, Heavenly Lord Ji, the monarch, and the inner demons also roared, and the dense ultimate mysteries turned into a huge wave that blotted out the sky, and angrily attacked. The others also unleashed their strongest techniques, including Dong Tianqian and the other two. But they didn't dare to hold back. Victory, defeat, life and death, it's all in this fight. Dong Yuxian clenched her hands, and the origin power in her body surged out. She didn't know how much it was. Kill. Fight to the death. The heavily injured white-eyed wolf also roared angrily. The enchantment formed by the origin power collapsed and surged forward like a raging wave. This was all they had. It was also their strongest attack. If they still couldn't defeat the greater rat, then they could only wait for death. Boom. In an instant, the densely packed ultimate mysteries and the terrifying origin energy drowned the greater rat. The group of people stared ahead nervously and expectantly. Suddenly, the greater rat's aura gradually dissipated. Sensing this, the group of people suddenly had a trace of joy on their faces. However, before they could be happy, boom, a shocking power erupted. This was the power of the greater rat. In just an instant, all the ultimate mysteries, all the origin power, and all the powerful methods were turned into ashes. Qin Feiyang and the group all suffered a backlash, and their feet kept retreating, blood gushing out of their mouths. However, they didn't care about their injuries at all, and hurriedly looked at the greater rat. In the end, they were disappointed. There wasn't a single wound on the greater rat's body. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? When you sense my aura gradually dissipating, were you so happy that you almost jumped up? The greater rat looked at the group of people with ridicule. The group of people was desperate. So many ultimate mysteries, so much origin power, but they couldn't even hurt a hair of the greater rat? Not to mention killing it. Is there no other way? If there isn't, then you can go to hell. The greater rat smiled ferociously. Inside its body, suddenly, a divine light rushed out. Wherever the divine light went, everything was destroyed. It was terrifying. Qin Feiyang and the others trembled. At this moment, Qin Feiyang felt like he was facing the dominator of the divine kingdom. His body couldn't move, and he could only wait for death. No. Facing the greater rat was more desperate than facing the dominator of the divine kingdom. Seeing that Qin Feiyang and the others were about to die, at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted behind them. A green foxtail swept past Qin Feiyang and the others, and went straight toward the divine light. Qin Batian. Young man. Qin Feiyang and the others immediately turned to look at the young man behind them. The young man's laziness and sleepiness had long been swept away, and it was replaced by a solemn face. Other methods are useless against it, so I can only stake it all on this. The young man looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and said. He suddenly waved his hand, and the green foxtail immediately burst into a dazzling 5-colored divine light, and a shocking aura rolled out. This was the young man's origin power. The group of people immediately turned around and stared at the green foxtail. This was their only hope now. If they still couldn't defeat the greater rat, then they would really be at the end of the road. Boom. The green foxtail carried everyone's hope, and collided with the divine light. In an instant, a bright light burst out, making it difficult for Qin Feiyang and the others to open their eyes. So, They raised their hands in front of their foreheads and stared fixedly at the broken void. Chapter 46:26. Shatter. This was the roar in the hearts of Qin Feiyang and the others. Rumble. The dog's tail grass and the divine light collided crazily, and the loud sound was as deafening as thunder. Qin Feiyang and the others continuously retreated. The roaring battle fluctuations caused the blood in their bodies to churn. Suddenly, with a crack, the divine light shattered. It works? Looking at this scene, Qin Feiyang and the others were in high spirits. The young man was indeed extraordinary. Of course, everyone knew that it was not the young man or the dog's tail grass that shattered the divine light. It was the power of origin hidden in the dog's tail grass. But even so, it was shocking enough. One had to know. They tried their best and used all their means, but they couldn't hurt the giant rat at all. It was obvious. How terrifying was the young man's power of origin. Dong Yuxian was shocked. She turned to Qin Feiyang and said, "Your ancestor has such a powerful power of origin. Why did you come to snatch the power of origin of our divine kingdom?" The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched, and he said indifferently, "He is him and I am me. Rely on yourself for everything?" Dong Yuxian was suspicious. Cough cough. Qin Feiyang coughed, and his expression was very unnatural. He nodded and said, "Yes." How else could he answer? Say that this person was not his ancestor Qin Batian? Even if he told the truth, Dong Yuxian might not believe him. "Aren't you celebrating too early?" The young man's eyes were heavy and he said, "I'm no match for him at all. Run." What? Everyone turned pale with fright. The young man couldn't even withstand the power of the giant rat? "Let's go." When they came back to their senses, they didn't dare to hesitate. The inner demons and Qin Feiyang activated the momentary time, and the dual wills of the heavenly axiom, leading the group to escape frantically. The giant rat glanced at Qin Feiyang and the others, as if it didn't care at all. It lowered its head to look at the young man and laughed. "I didn't expect such a ruthless character to appear this time. Since you know, why don't you retreat?" The young man's eyes were like torches. This was the first time she had seen him so serious and serious. "You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth just because of a few words of praise? You're courting death." The giant rat's eyes glowed fiercely. The giant claw suddenly lifted up and mercilessly slapped at the green foxtail. The young man did not dare to be careless. With a wave of his hand, his origin energy rolled out. It exploded with dazzling five-colored divine light and blasted towards the giant claw. A pitiful ant. "I'll show you what crushing strength is." The greater rat struggled to smile before it crashed down. Rumble. The five-colored divine light was annihilated on the spot, and the power of origin was shattered. Following closely, accompanied by a loud cracking sound, the green foxtail was torn apart on the spot. What? Qin Feiyang and the others glared angrily. Even the young man's origin energy could not defeat the greater rat? Just how strong was he? Ants are just ants in the end. The game of cat and mouse officially begins now. The greater rat sneered and grabbed the young man and the snow python with its huge claws. Then it opened its bloody mouth and stuffed them into its mouth. This scene made Qin Feiyang and the others' scalps tingle. The powerful young man was swallowed alive by the greater rat? Quick, quick, quick. For a moment, everyone was urging Qin Feiyang and the inner demons. Now, whether they could escape or not depended on their speed. Cat and mouse, what an interesting game. You guys have to play with me. The greater rat stepped forward and chased after Qin Feiyang and the others. "You're the rat, okay?" The white-eyed wolf roared. A rat actually wanted to play a game of cat and mouse? What kind of world was this? "I'll choose you." The greater rat stared at the white-eyed wolf and laughed. It immediately stretched out its huge claws and grabbed at the white-eyed wolf. The white-eyed wolf had previously survived under the protection of the power of origin. Moreover, with the help of the mermaid princess Eye of Life, its injuries had been healed. However, facing the greater rat, even if its injuries were healed and restored to its peak state, it was meaningless. "Bastard! I won't let you go even if I become a ghost." The white-eyed wolf roared. Even if you turn into a ghost, I'll still kill you. As the greater rat's voice fell, its huge claws slammed down. Qin Feiyang and the others were clearly with the white-eyed wolf, but the greater rat just didn't attack Qin Feiyang and the others. It grabbed the white-eyed wolf. Brother Wolf! Lunatic roared. With a clang, the sword of all evil slashed wildly. However, the powerful sword of all evil stood on the greater rat's claws, but it couldn't even cut off a single hair. Bastard! Let him go for me! Qin Feiyang also roared. And the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death appeared with monstrous power. But the result was still the same. The law of life and death blasted on the giant claws, as if it was just scratching an itch. The greater rat was so powerful that it made people despair. I'll fight it out with you. The white-eyed wolf also knew that he couldn't escape death. A destructive aura roared out from his body. Self-destruction. Rather than being swallowed alive, it was better to self-destruct and die with dignity. Brother Wolf. The mermaid princess and the others also had a look of grief and indignation. Especially Fire Dance and Longqin. Let him go for me. Longqin held the angel's sword and attacked desperately. Holy dragon? Not a bad ration. The greater rat laughed out loud. Its other claw fell down and grabbed the Longqin, then it stuffed it into its bloody mouth. Little sister. Longqin was also angry. The mid-level Dominator heavenly weapon, Sky Dragon sword, and God's domain attacked angrily. But it was useless. Brother run. With a desperate cry, Longqin disappeared into the greater rat's wide mouth, including the angel's sword. Damn woman, why are you so stupid? The white-eyed wolf's eyes instantly turned red. A destructive aura rolled in all directions. His body directly exploded in the greater rat's claw. But, even if it was a self-destruction, it couldn't hurt the greater rat. White-eyed wolf. Longqin. Why are you still running? We can't escape at all. Lunatic clenched his hands tightly. Qin Feiyang also listened and didn't escape. The inner demons were the same. Even Dong Yuxian Dong Tianchen, and the other two had no complaints about the inner demons stopping at this moment. Because this was the truth. There was no way to escape. Don't run anymore. That's boring. How about this? I can let one of you go. But in advance, you have to kill everyone else. The last person who survives, not only will I let him go, but I will also let him enter the arcane realm. The greater rat looked at the group of people mockingly. Everyone stared at the greater rat, their eyes full of anger. It wasn't enough to tease them for so long. And now it wanted them to kill each other? This is your only chance to live. The greater rat laughed. Don't even think about it. We'd rather die than become your entertainment. Princess Yuexian's eyes were gloomy. If it was someone who wasn't smart enough, they would definitely believe that as long as they killed everyone, the greater rat would let them go in the end. For example, Dong Qingyuan and Dong Hanzong. They would definitely think of ways to kill the people around them. But Qin Feiyang and the others, were they stupid? They weren't stupid. The greater rat made it sound nice, but when there was really only one person left, it would definitely not let them go. For the greater rat, this was still a game of looking for fun. I'd rather it be. Okay, I'll fulfill your wish. Being seen through by everyone, the greater rat was a little embarrassed and angry. A divine light swept out, carrying a monstrous power, and went straight to Dong Yuxian. Dong Yuexian's face was pale. Whoosh! However, at this moment, a figure rushed in front of Dong Yuexian and pushed her away. Immediately, the divine light blasted on the figure that suddenly appeared. Lu Yintian. Dong Yuexian stared blankly at the man standing in the void. This person was the inner demons. I'll take my leave first. The inner demons smiled at Qin Feiyang and the others, and its body exploded on the spot, blood splattering in the sky. Lu Yintian. Dong Yuexian screamed. She looked as if she had gone crazy. This bastard, he actually sacrificed himself to save her? What a loving man, I'm interested. How touching. If that's the case, I'll send you to hell to reunite. The greater rat laughed and suddenly raised its giant claws, slapping at Dong Yuexian. You're usually so cold to me. I thought you didn't like me, but it turns out you have me in your heart. Princess Yuxian looked at the place where the inner demon's body was shattered, and a smile appeared on her peerless face. Then she closed her eyes, and as the giant claws fell, blood splattered in all directions. Qin Feiyang and the others saw this scene. They were really surprised by the inner demon's performance, because this was the first time they saw the inner demons being willing to die for a woman. This meant that the inner demons were indeed attracted to Dong Yuxian. But now it didn't matter. It was going to happen anyway. Qin Feiyang turned to look at the mermaid princess and apologized. "I'm sorry, I couldn't protect you." "It's okay. I'm already very satisfied to die together." The mermaid princess grabbed Qin Feiyang's hand without any complaints or regrets. Qin Feiyang held his lover's hand tightly, as if he was afraid that they would be separated in hell. Then he looked at the madman Long Chun, the demon ancestor, the king and the others and smiled. "In my next life. I hope I can still meet you in my next life." "Don't. Meeting you in this life is already troublesome. I don't want to be so troublesome in my next life." "That's right. In my next life, I want to have some peace and quiet. Don't come looking for me." Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing spoke one after another. At this moment, everyone had completely let go of the past. Being able to die together was also a kind of fate. It's too touching. However, you still have to die. The greater rat laughed savagely, and its giant claws slammed down. This place suddenly turned blood red, as beautiful as a flower. No. Qin Feiyang was also about to die under the giant claws, but suddenly, his gaze trembled, and he raised his head to look at the greater rat's eyes. In its eyes, there seemed to be a world of nothingness. And in the void, there were still figures standing. Was he seeing things? He rubbed his eyes and looked again. Nothing had changed. In the greater rat's eyes, there were indeed figures standing there. After careful identification, he found that the group of people in the greater rat's eyes were actually him, the white-eyed wolf, and the others. What was going on? Weren't the white-eyed wolf and the others already dead? Why would they appear in the greater rat's eyes? Moreover, that world of nothingness was exactly the same as the passage to the secret realm. Could it be? Qin Feiyang's body shook, and he roared angrily. This is another illusion. Chapter 46-27. Boom. An unyielding will erupted. Qin Feiyang took a step forward and rushed towards the giant rat's claw like a sharp arrow. Originally, that terrifying giant claw was actually pierced through by Qin Feiyang's willpower at this moment. Following closely, he rushed towards the giant rat's eyes crazily. At this moment, a trace of panic crept into the giant rat's expression. I understand now. This kind of illusion is a test of willpower. As long as I have willpower that surpasses everything, I can crush you. Qin Feiyang was seething with anger. His entire body was burning with flames. This was the manifestation of his willpower. In front of the huge giant rat, he was like a tiny ant. However, at this moment, this ant, relying on his strong willpower, broke through the layers of giant waves and punched towards the giant rat's eyes. Crack! A sound like a mirror shattering was heard. Immediately, the giant rat's eye membrane began to collapse. Following closely, its eyes also shattered crazily. Finally, the giant rat's entire body dissipated with a bang. As the giant rat dissipated, the surrounding bones and blood all disappeared into nothingness. The shattered void also gradually healed. At this moment, Qin Feiyang looked around. The place where he was and the passage before had not changed at all. But there, in the void behind him stood a group of people. These people were the white-eyed wolf, and the others who had already died. None of them died. That's great. Looking at these familiar faces, Qin Feiyang's face revealed a bright smile. There was nothing happier than the dead appearing in front of him alive. What a terrifying illusion. Just as the emperor said, you thought you had escaped from the illusion, but in the end, you were still in the illusion. The first illusion was already terrifying enough. And the second illusion was even more terrifying. Because the place that appeared was in this passage, there was also a space-time storm, the entrance of the secret realm, and the giant rat guarding the entrance of the secret realm. It was even more realistic than the first one. After coming to this kind of place once, You would never want to come to a second time. Wait. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang quickly turned his gaze to the white-eyed wolf and the others. At this moment, the group of people were motionless. Beads of sweat appeared on their foreheads, and their faces were pale. This scene was exactly the same as what Qin Feiyang saw after he got rid of the first illusion. Is it another illusion? This caused him to be bewildered. He was really scared now. The illusions came one after another, causing him to lose his confidence. Whoosh. Suddenly, a piercing sound could be heard. Qin Feiyang hurriedly raised his head and saw a huge figure flying towards them at lightning speed. Snow python? He then looked at the back of the snow python. The young man was also lying on the back of the snow python. You woke up so soon. When the snow python flew over, the young man looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Qin Feiyang remained silent. His eyes were filled with bewilderment. In the second illusion, this young man had confused him, because at that time, he already had doubts in his heart. Could it be an illusion? However, the young man's words dispelled his doubts in his heart. As the saying goes, once bitten, twice shy. So now, he couldn't believe the young man in front of him. What if it was another illusion? Look at your expression. Did I trick you in the illusion? The young man looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Yes. Qin Feiyang didn't deny it. Sure enough, this illusory realm is really deadly. The young man shook his head and said, Do you know what this illusion is called? What? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Catoptric deflection. It is known as the strongest illusion in the world. Your eye of life and death couldn't see through it. The young man sighed. Then how did you get rid of the illusion? Qin Feiyang frowned and couldn't help but glance at the snow python. In the second illusion, the snow python had the eye of illusion. However, in the face of the second illusion, the eye of illusion was useless. So now he really wanted to know if the snow python in reality had the eye of illusion. Since I know the name of this illusion, of course I have the ability to break it. However, I don't need to do it. It can do it. The young man patted the snow python's head. Eye of illusion? Qin Feiyang blurted out these words. How do you know? Have you seen it in the illusion? The young man was stunned and asked suspiciously. Yes. However, the eye of illusion in the illusion couldn't see through the second illusion. Qin Feiyang said. It is indeed a catoptric deflection. It is hard to distinguish between the real and the fake. The young man shook his head. Then he looked at Qin Feiyang and explained. The eye of illusion can see through all illusions in the world. Therefore, the eye of illusion that you saw in the illusion was just a trick that the illusion played on you. Qin Feiyang frowned and asked, How many illusions have you experienced? 3. The young man said. 3? 3 illusions in such a short time. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He had only experienced 2 illusions. Can illusions be measured by time? Everything in the illusion, including time, is fake. The young man said lightly. Qin Feiyang nodded, but he still didn't let down his guard against the young man. He was really worried that everything he saw now was an illusion again. This would make him collapse. I think you are going crazy because of the illusion. The young man shook his head and smiled and continued. But soon you will know whether you are still in the illusion or not. Qin Feiyang was surprised. Because I have found the entrance to the secret realm. After the young man said, he looked at the snow python and said, Wake everyone up. The snow python nodded. The eye of illusion was opened. Qin Feiyang looked at the eye of illusion. It was exactly the same as the eye of illusion he saw in the second illusion. Following the awakening of the eye of recklessness, the white-eyed wolf and the others, who were standing still, immediately quivered and returned to reality. They all had confused expressions. Where is this? Everyone glanced around. The snow python said, Welcome back to the real world. The real world? Are you sure this is the real world? Everyone was bewildered. Obviously, they had all been tortured by the illusion. Also, we have found the entrance to the secret realm. Follow us. After the snow python said that, it turned around and flew in the direction it came from. Everyone looked at each other, but in the end, they still chose to follow. Madman ran to Qin Feiyang's side and said, "Old Qin, are we really not in the illusion now?" "I don't know." Qin Feiyang shook his head. When Madman heard this, he looked at Qin Feiyang's eyes and couldn't help but be vigilant. This made Qin Feiyang speechless. He finally understood the feelings of the young man before. Because before, he was also very vigilant towards the young man. Madman wasn't the only one. Now everyone was silent. They looked at each other with vigilance. Even the mermaid princess didn't get close to Qin Feiyang. This illusory realm is really making everyone panic. Looking at this scene, Qin Feiyang sighed in his heart. Ooh, suddenly. In front, the sound of wind came. Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. Another space-time storm? Sure enough. Soon, a series of space-time storms of a huge scale came whistling over. The dogtail grass at the corner of the mysterious young man's mouth bloomed with 5-colored divine light, transforming into a barrier to protect everyone. Very smoothly, they passed through the space-time storm. After moving forward for more than half an hour, they encountered 3 more space-time storms during which they safely passed through. Finally, a huge beast shadow appeared in front. Qin Feiyang fixed his eyes on it, and his pupils immediately shrank. The giant beast in front was exactly the same as the giant rat he saw in the second illusion. And it was also lying in the void and sleeping. Don't say that I didn't warn you. This giant beast is even stronger than the giant star beast. Don't wake it up and carefully go in from the entrance. The young man said with a serious expression. Okay. Everyone nodded. Qin Feiyang didn't dare to be careless. Because in the illusion he personally experienced the power of the giant rat. That was a godlike existence, making people despair. The entrance to the secret realm is there. Dong Qingyuan pointed to the stomach of the giant rat. The entrance to the secret realm was also a stone door. The shape was the same as the stone door Qin Feiyang saw in the illusion, but there was a difference in size. The entrance to this secret realm was very small, only 1 meter wide and 3 meters high. Almost only one person could pass through. And the stone door in the illusion was hundreds of feet high, like a mountain. But fortunately, now the stone door was not in the giant rat's arms, but in front of the giant rat's stomach. There was no cover, so it was easy to enter. Let's go. The young man jumped down from the snow python's back. The snow python also became the size of a palm and landed on the young man's shoulder. Then the young man called out and walked toward the entrance of the secret realm. The group of people restrained their aura to the extreme. They were afraid that they would make any noise and wake the giant rat. Let's go in first. Seeing that the entrance to the secret realm was close, Dong Hanzong and Dong Qingyuan looked at each other and immediately rushed to the front. At the same time, their eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness. We can't let them go in front. The white-eyed wolf secretly exclaimed. These 2 despicable guys, if they were allowed to go in front, who knew what kind of trouble they would cause? But now, because they were afraid of waking the giant rat, they didn't dare to activate the will of heavenly axiom and momentary time, so the advantage of speed was gone. So, they could only desperately catch up. Finally, Dong Hanzong and Dong Qingyuan rushed to the entrance of the secret realm. Suddenly, Dong Hanzong waved his hand, and the power of all kinds of laws surged out, transforming into a torrent that slammed into the giant rat's head. Then, without looking back, the giant rat followed Dong Qingyuan into the entrance of the arcane realm and disappeared. Dong Hanzong, Qin Feiyang and the others were instantly furious. As expected, he was up to no good. Even the mysterious young man's eyes couldn't help but darken and he shouted, "Go in quickly." Qin Feiyang gently patted the mermaid princess on the shoulder, and the mermaid princess immediately flew into the entrance of the secret realm uncontrollably. Then he looked at the madman and the others and said, "You guys go in first, be careful of Dong Hanzong." Got it. The madman nodded. At this time, there was no need to be pretentious. The group rushed into the entrance of the secret realm crazily. Long Chen also let Long Qin enter the secret realm first. There was no other way. The entrance of the secret realm in reality was too small, so they could only enter one by one. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.